Hey everyone, Sycra in here, and today I'm joined with my good friend Bob Meatbag.
Hey, meatbags. It's Bob Meatbag.
And the reason he's here is last week I did a video about my struggles in art, and I said I was going to continue it, and this week I'm going to continue it. But so much of that struggle was shared with Bob Meatbag here. We met in animation school, and since then we became friends and decided, we're gonna work together to get better in art, to just, encourage each other and push each other to get better. And then this is what happened, what came of it. So, Bob, do you want to talk about this drawing on the screen?
Oh, God.
This is before animation school, though, right?
Yeah, this was just before, I think, I'm not sure, like, when I drew this, I'm not sure which sketchbook it was on, but yeah, this was definitely before animation school, when I just got started.
Yeah,
And,
I think this was the first image I saw you do,
yeah,
and I was like, oh, okay.
you were not impressed.
Well, I don't know. I was like, oh, okay, so this
No,
guy.
I wouldn't be impressed if I saw it either. Like, it was during this time, I think, because, like, when I was drawing my own stuff, which I realize now that people responded to more because I was being myself, but when I was drawing this, it was just sort of like, well, my own stuff isn't that great. I should be copying other things. And then I was looking at comics at the time,
Yeah.
and it's just like, oh, let me just draw Thor, and then
So this was what, 2010?
yeah, I think it was around
How old were you? I mean, it doesn't really matter how old you were, but I mean, in reference to how many years.
I think I was 18 or maybe 19. I'm not sure. It was somewhere around that age.
Man. So you're starting where I started in my previous one with my Ninja Turtle. But anyway. Okay,
Okay.
so yeah, I think I saw this one too. This Thor.
Yeah. More Thor stuff. It's just this thing. It's just like I was just trying to copy other people's work, and it's like, as you can see, when I'm not being myself, it really suffers.
Yeah, because what's interesting to me, and for those of you who are unfamiliar with Bob Meatbag's work, I'm gonna pretend you are familiar, and hopefully you can check it out because it's just easier that way. Because Bob has a very distinctive style, and yeah, I'm gonna pretend you know him already.
Yeah.
So anyway, this like I can already feel your current stuff in some of your work, just not in the copies and stuff as much.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
the guy from Fallout?
Possible. No, maybe it's Half-Life. I don't know. It might be either one of those. Yeah. Just around this time, it's just like I was just doing a lot of stuff that was just copying, basically. So, I think by this point where I'm already in VFS, and then it's like, I think I already stopped doing like Marvel stuff, and then I was sort of just drawing whatever came to mind, and then usually the more of the stuff that I drew, that's myself, just involved a lot of screwing faces and that kind of stuff. I think there's some here, and yeah, some on this page as well. Yeah,
There's a lot of cool stuff. See, I like this guy. That's very nice. This farmer
Yeah.
dude.
Yeah, I think whenever I just like, I didn't worry about trying to be something else. I think more of my own stuff came through.
Yeah, I noticed the lines are not as smooth as your current lines now.
Yeah, I think that was before I figured out how to just draw with my arm. I think it was at this point when it was just sort of like I was still like I wouldn't say my stuff is completely chicken scratchy, but it's still like it's not as nearly as confident as some of the stuff I'm doing now, or even drawing later in VFS.
Okay.
So there's more Thor stuff. I think possibly at this point I was already introduced to life drawing, so I might explain why some of the stuff, the lines might be a bit more confident.
Yeah.
Yeah, some more stuff. There's fucking jeez, Legend of Zelda stuff on there. That's embarrassing.
Oh, this one.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's this character that's. You said this is original,
Yeah, that's original.
but it looks. No offense to Marvel, but I like your character much more than this character. Thor.
Yeah. I think you told me as much. It's
Yeah.
just like during BFS as well. It's just like, oh, I saw your Marvel stuff. It's like not that impressive, but it's just like your own stuff is actually pretty cool. I think I really took it to heart. So it's just like, I owe a lot of that to the comments that you gave me.
Wow, good comments.
It was a good call to listen. But yeah,
Yeah.
some more just random stuff here, and it's just like looking back on this stuff. It's just like, man, what was I thinking when I drew these? It's like I don't even know what some of these are anymore. It's so strange.
Yeah. Well,
Uh,
this is kind of interesting. Like, I like this guy. What is he? A crazy mad scientist?
yeah, with some I don't know. Like for that one, there's like some sort of tree growing out of his head. For the other one, I don't know. It's just like it's like for the one on the top left, it was just like, oh, that's the initial one, and for the other one that's to the lower right, it's like, oh, how can I push this? How can I make it more animation like?
Yeah,
I think
it's
those were the thoughts going
amazing.
through my head. Yeah.
One of the reasons I wanted to do this with Bob here is because, like, not just that we were like kind of at the same in the same period at the same time, but the way you think, Bob, is very intuitive, and the way I think is very analytical.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a good contrast for the different types of people. Because there's a spectrum of people, and some people are more analytical, some people are sort of in between, some people are more intuitive,
Mm-hmm.
and we're pretty much polar opposites.
Yeah. Like, cause for me, it's for a long time I realized that and maybe it was during this period where I kind of knew it as well, but it's just like there are periods where it's like I'm just drawing and it's like, oh, there's this feeling that I have in me. And then if I draw it, it's just like, oh, the image seems better somehow. But
Hmm.
it's like, it's really touch and go. And that's the thing with intuition. Like, I'm not necessarily in control of it. And I certainly wasn't during VFS. But yeah, so as you can see here, there's some more, yeah, I don't know. It's just like I look at these images and I just don't know what to say. Yeah, this is just
But there, I think
this
this
thing.
one's really cool. Like the idea of it. Like, okay, there's a
Uh,
house, and
mm,
what I noticed is this is something I really struggle with. Lots of struggles here, but anyway, like getting expression and emotion,
mm,
even though, yeah, fine, they might not be as well executed, but it's like, okay, this guy's got an expression, this guy's got an expression, this guy's got a feeling. It's sort of a character you would want to know more about.
mm.
Uh,
Yeah, I suppose so. Like that's the comments that I usually get when I it's just like when I'm more myself when I draw
mhm.
these kinds of things. For a long time, I don't think I really appreciated this kind of stuff. But I suppose even looking at it now, as tough as it is, it's just like I guess I can see where you're coming from.
Yeah, it took me forever to convince you that you were at all good in any way.
Yeah. It takes a long time to. Well, I think a lot of people have this kind of self-doubt, but I guess for me, I was even more thick-headed about it. But
Yeah,
there's some more. I don't know. I guess this is perspective stuff, and it's just like,
yeah,
yeah, it's even more difficult to use this kind of stuff than for the characters. Cause just because I'm not familiar with it, so I guess my intuition wasn't really able to pick it up as well. But yeah, I guess there's more screaming faces here. Some stuff with fists. Nothing really specific. I'm not. Yeah, these were just sort of random drawings that I was doing during VFS.
mm-hmm. Some
I
whale
think
dude.
Yeah, I think these ones are a bit more relevant to some VFS assignments, but I really don't remember which one. Like
Yeah,
the one
because
on the
this one
top.
doesn't look at all like your style.
Yeah, no. That's one of the things that I really noticed during VFS because like
And by
one of the
VFS, you mean Vancouver Film School for,
yeah Vancouver Film
and
School.
we were studying classical animation.
Yeah. During that time, what I noticed with just like people or animators that are really flexible with their style. It's like okay, you have a lot more utility there, and then I think that's one of the things that they sort of promoted.
Hmm.
But for me, it's just like when I tried to do somebody else's style, it's just like fuck, this is so difficult.
Hmm.
Like it's so hard for me to just like not be myself, and I
Yeah.
really struggle with that.
Yep. And more.
Yeah,
Just
more
go
of this
through.
stuff. Yeah.
Da. At least there's always like this consistent screaming face thing. It's very
Yeah,
much a theme throughout
yeah,
your works.
yeah. Uh, Obviously not my stuff. Some more
Hmm.
VFS stuff, anyways.
Yep.
Mm, I guess I was trying to draw some cool female character, but as you can see, it's not really anything. So I obviously didn't know how to draw females at this point. But yeah. God.
I don't know. It's not
So-
bad.
Yeah, I know, but it's just, you know how it is looking back at your old work. It's like, oh my
Oh.
God,
Oh.
oh, this is terrible. Oh, jeez Louise. It's weird just sort of like seeing, because like when you're doing your own stuff, it's just sort of like, oh, yeah, I'm just doing this thing. But like looking back, it's like, oh, I did make some progress after all.
Mm. This looks so not like your stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
It's got, yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say that it's got none of the shapes that I'm really using. This one I actually don't mind because it's so bad. It's so bad that it's just like I don't even feel anything.
But this one's really cool. Like, when I saw this, I was like, holy, you've got something here. This has energy. It feels like, oh, you've got a gesture. You've got... Like, yeah, this one's a bit, you know.
It's garbage.
So we had a little thing where you basically redrew this character, but the way you would draw him today.
Yeah, and there's another character that I redrew on the left of him, and you know, it's like obviously I have more knowledge on how to do things now. And, yeah.
Yeah, it's still interesting to see. Like, oh, okay.
Like I like just like when I was trying to redraw it, it's just like, oh my God, how do I draw this thing? The design is so terrible. And then it's just like I'm trying to stick to the original image and the original design, but it's like no, the original design is too bad. It's so bad. I have to change it into something else, and I did.
Yeah, I like this one. I feel like it feels like, okay, sure, it's like a robot butler guy who's also or maybe a bodyguard. I don't know.
Yeah. I almost thought of him as a bouncer of some kind. But yeah, so that's that character, and then more into VFS stuff. They're all pretty like consistently bad, I think.
I don't know. I remember envying you so much. Just like even this, the thing is, oh sure, I could say, well, you know, oh the lines aren't that smooth or something, but it still felt cool. Like it had an appeal to it. I think that's the word I'm looking for. Your work was always appealing.
Right. Well, I suppose one of the things is just like, for me, I just felt as though there's a certain taste that I had, and then it's like even though in terms of execution I wasn't very good, I had something in mind that I wanted to express with these images. So I guess that showed through, whether or not I was good at the time.
And who's this supposed to be? Beethoven?
Yeah. We were doing characters, possible characters for our assignments, and then this was just one of the characters that I came up with. I'm not sure how I arrived at Beethoven, but this is what happened. And then it's just like, oh, okay, let me draw Beethoven. And I think something of his brooding expression kind of fit with my style. Because it was easy. I remember when I drew this character, it's just like, oh, this character is easier to draw for some reason. Yeah. So more of the Beethoven character, I was trying to just basically test out how he would move and stuff like that. Still kind of weird looking, and like it's still kind of rough for me at this point, but you know, just trying him out.
Yeah, but like you're giving him a story, having him do stuff, and then these characters are really cool. These two.
Yeah. I suppose. Yeah, that's just. I think just as time went, it's sort of like because you're just doing animation stuff. And there's no specific style except for the ones they try to get, except for the assignment stuff. But it's just like when you're doing your own animation things, you don't have time to worry about copying other styles and stuff like that. And then for this one I started to add other characters with the Beethoven character, and with Beethoven, he's obviously the maestro, he's conducting the orchestra, and then for this guy I thought it's like, okay, well why don't I get somebody to play the violin or something, and then originally he's like the big mustache guy, he's like, oh, he's angry as well, but then it's like, no, Beethoven's already angry, so why don't I give him another emotion, like why don't I just make him sad? And then there's a third character, which is a little girl, and it's just like, okay, well, they're both kind of intense. What if I just give her like sort of a bored emotion, just sort of neutral? It's like, okay, that's something to work with.
Yeah.
Oh, what is it?
I don't know. It's like, oh, angry, sad, and bored. Story of my life.
Oh, same here, I think. But yeah, so now,
Okay.
yeah, now it's just sort of like, oh, let's assign the instruments. I already knew what Beethoven's gonna be. He's gonna have the baton, the conducting baton, and the big guy. He's gonna have the violin, and then for the girl, I just didn't know. So I was just like, oh, maybe give her a saxophone. I don't know. I guess maybe it was because it's partly inspired by The Simpsons or something. But yeah. Yeah, that's what I ended up giving her.
You know what I would have given her? Because she's bored, I would have given her the triangle. Because it's like, have you seen concerts where they're just waiting? The person who hits the triangle is just waiting.
Yeah.
Oh, I get to do it. Ding. I mean, usually they're doing all the percussion, so they get to hit the timpani and whatever. But still, sometimes they're just waiting.
Okay, well, yeah, that would have been a lot better if just her standing there, waiting, and then, yeah. That would have been a much better idea, I think. Oh, well, anyways. Some more stuff. I don't know why, but this just feels super pretentious to me. But anyways.
Why?
I don't know. It's sort of like, oh, let's give them elements. Let's give them, what's their specific element? Oh, Beethoven, he's going to be all thunder and lightning, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the guy with the violin, oh, he's going to be raining. Oh, the bored girl. I don't know why I ended up giving, like, it's supposed to be an eclipse or something.
Oh.
I don't know. Is it supposed to be an eclipse? I don't know, but either way, it's like, that's what I ended up giving them. And it just, to me, for some reason, it just feels pretentious. But yeah.
Oh, wow, you did them a lot.
Yeah, I think looking back at my stuff, one thing that I noticed was that I was really insecure with drawing these characters. So then what ended up happening was just like, oh, I would draw something and then I would draw it over and over and over again, and then just like each time it's just like, no, I'm still not confident with these characters. I'm going to keep drawing them. I actually got to the point where it was detrimental to my work, and I think you had to remind me, just like, dude, you've already drawn this character in this specific assignment enough times. Just like fucking do the work or something. Because yeah, I was just doing it over and over again, same characters.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah, more of the yeah, as you can see.
No, but it's good. It's exploration. This is what I recommended myself to do in the last video. Like,
Yeah.
obviously it worked for you. I mean, look at your evolution, how fast you improved.
Yeah, I think I might have pushed it to the point where it's too much, because the thing when I was exploring these characters, when I was drawing them over and over again, it wasn't really like, oh, let's do something specifically different. It was just sort of like, oh, I drew them over and over again, and at some point, I intuitively picked something else. And that's sort of how I worked. It's very slow in some ways, but it does let me get more comfortable with the character. So, for example, with the sad violin guy, he was sort of like he almost had a hillbilly clothing sort of thing. So then I was just like thinking, I think at one point I just gave him this clothing. I'm not exactly sure what the reason was. Maybe it was just sort of like, oh, well, it would make more sense because like Beethoven would dress him up or something. Like, maybe that was a possible reason. I don't really remember, but I gave him different clothes at some point. So yeah.
Okay.
More of the exploration. I think at this point, one of the classmates introduced me to this small art book, and then the person that I was looking at, he had a style that, like, when I was doing the VFS assignments, they had us do other styles. It was super difficult, but for some reason, when I copied this guy's art book, it was just like, oh, it's so easy for me because his style was so similar to my style. And then I think that ended up carrying over to this kind of stuff. Like, my stuff got a lot more detailed. It looked less cartoony, and, like the way it looks right now. More explorations on the characters. Like, one thing I did notice that it's just sort of like the more comfortable I grew with the character, the more sort of detail I was able to add to them. Because sort of like at first you're just so worried about creating the character. It's like, oh, what does he look like? And then afterwards, oh, how can I consistently draw this character? That part of your brain is it's just sort of like it's using up resources in your brain. But when you get comfortable enough with the characters, it's just reflex, and then you can start adding in a lot more detail, a lot more nuance, I suppose. Yeah.
I guess I still have to learn this lesson. Yeah, geez, because you're still going and you're still improving them.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things about like drawing things just like over and over again. You just get so comfortable with it that just eventually like, it's like with everything. You're comfortable with it, and then it stops using up resources in your brain, and then you can just do a lot more. So yeah, same thing here, over and over again. Like at this point, I think Beethoven, like this might. I'm not sure, like if I did any more Beethoven characters, but at this point, it was just like, oh, he seems very at the time I thought he seemed very finished, just the
Yeah,
way he is now.
and
Yeah,
like these expressions are great. Just
yeah, yeah,
you've got him.
yeah. Like compared to the very first ones, where he's just sort of like he's very rough in a way. You know,
Yeah, I
it's
mean,
just like
this
yeah.
is how many months would you say this is into the school?
Ah, I can't tell. I really don't remember. It's too long ago. But like it must have been. It can't have been that long because
Yeah,
like it was somewhat early.
yeah. It,
Yeah,
it was
must have been
probably in the first term,
yeah, yeah, I think so because I remember it's like this was at least like maybe a month or two in, maybe a
but
little
like
bit more,
that's a
but not that
huge
much.
improvement.
Yeah,
Jesus,
yeah,
from where you started to this. Like, whoa.
yeah, yeah. I think one of the big things that looking back now that I realize is sort of like um because like before I went to VFS, I just sort of doodled drawings and I wasn't really serious about it. It's like, oh, let me just draw it here and there, and I wasn't really doing much. But being in an environment where you're supposed to be working and going into VFS, I was really intimidated because oh, there must be all these other artists. Oh, and, I really got to catch up. But like, what happens is that when you're in that kind of environment, your brain like it naturally because like let's say you're just in your room by yourself. For me anyways, I'm using up a lot of energy to just try to force myself to work, but when I'm in an environment where it's like oh like school or at work, then it's just sort of like there's this other factor that's forcing you to work, so you're not using that much energy. You just go like oh I just work, I guess, and you
Hmm.
sort of adapt to it. So I suppose that's something for a school environment, I suppose.
Yeah,
But yeah, um here's yeah these are more assignments. Like looking at these now, it's just like oh this feels like somebody else's work, it's not mine.
yeah. Well, they kind of that's part of the assignment is to mimic different styles and stuff. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I found it easier than you did
Hmm.
because I remember how much you struggled with okay making a character look like something else, and for me it was almost easier because all I had to do was look at okay measure the characters like how tall are they, oh they're 3 heads high, okay so 1 2 3. When it came to the stuff like this like what you're doing here, this is really like my head would just explode. How do you know how to do it? Where are the measurements? Where are the and yet it's still the same character. It's like, you've got the character.
Hmm.
But this stuff, it's like, oh yeah, oh this makes more sense to me. Oh, how are the lines? Oh, they're thick and stuff. Just
Hmm.
it
Hmm.
made more sense, but I hated that it did because I would have rather had your ability.
Yeah, I
um,
suppose so. Like yeah, since everything is so intuition based, it's just like whenever I try to do something else, it's just like no, this is not in my repertoire, in my
mhm.
intuition. It's too tough. But yeah, these are some other characters that I created, and it's just yeah, that I'm seeing a lot of problems now, like with the legs and everything and the proportions. But it's like looking at it now, it's like, oh well, they still have character, I suppose.
Yeah, it's got a lot of potential. It's like yeah,
Yeah.
okay, there's broken anatomy.
Hmm. Hmm.
But yeah, it's really really cool. I
Um.
love this simplicity of this the tie.
Yeah.
That's just amazing.
Yeah. Well, with animation, like it's like if you add in too much detail, that's going to be really hard to animate. One thing I can say for the earlier work is that because like I'm just so ignorant about the technicalities, like anatomy and perspective, like I made so many errors, but in a way at that time I think I was the most free because it's just like if I were to do things now, it's like okay, I gotta make sure the anatomy is right, the perspective is more correct and stuff like that. But here it's just sort of like I'm just drawing the characters, not
Hmm.
worrying about the technical stuff too much.
Yeah. Okay, so this is already out of school now, right?
Yeah, yeah, this is post VFS, and one thing that I really noticed after I was done VFS is just sort of like I had no idea what I was going to do. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, what do I do now? Do I try to do like at one point I was even like doing some caricature stuff, I think. Um, those were really bad. Just because it's like, okay, I guess I'll just do everything. Because like
Yeah.
yeah,
Because we both weren't really into animation that much, but it's
yeah.
like, well, what do you
Animation,
do then?
yeah. One, animation is really difficult, and two, it's just sort of like after just looking at the options after VFS, it's just like those aren't really desirable for me.
Because it
So
wasn't it wasn't classical. It was more cutout animation.
mhm.
So like My Little Pony type stuff and
It was yeah, it's Flash,
Flash.
and it's the thing with Flash is just like all the energy from because like with classical animation, it's there was a lot more expression that you could do, like because it's like oh, it's pencil to paper, and that's very you can get a lot from that. But like with Flash, it's just something. It's just it's gone, and it's very kind of soulless in a way.
Yeah,
But yeah, so here there's some more stuff. I think this one isn't too bad because like this is just
I
more of
still
myself.
like this. I still think it's really good.
Yeah,
And
like in a way it feels, in a way it almost feels a lot more like me
yeah,
than I am now. Because I think what I realized is just sort of like when you learn more of the technical stuff, when you learn more of the rules from reality, you do end up losing a bit of yourself. It's like because that's why I said like with those two silhouette characters, the male and the female that are like that had that you said you really like the simplicity of like when I said oh I was the most free in that way is because like I didn't pay the price of learning the technical stuff of reality,
yeah.
you know, so like that's something to keep in mind I think. But yeah, so like even looking at this, it's just like I think this was one of the better works, but I was still really confused as to what I was supposed to do next. But yeah, this was one of the good ones.
I had that feeling last week when I was doing the other video. It was
Mm.
like I looked at some of the realistic ones, like this isn't so bad, and then
Mm.
it felt like there was a lot more depth to it than some of the pointy chin stuff I'm doing now. And it's like, but I'm trying to, you know, don't not get sucked back into I'm going to pursue realism then, because it's like no, you've chosen your path, now stick with it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. More of the box guy, basically, just
Yeah.
in another perspective. I really wasn't like after that image. I really wasn't like I did this stuff as well. And it's really rough and unpolished, but it's just sort of like one of the things that I was doing at the time was like I didn't realize it. Well, actually, I think I realized it even then. But like I had a lot of problems coming up with ideas. Oh, what should I do next? Because like a lot of the stuff that I was doing is really based on emotion and intuition. It's like, oh, I have this feeling, and then maybe I want to express that through that image, but the emotion goes away very quickly.
Yeah.
So a lot of the times I just end up with this sort of like feeling, oh, I don't really feel anything right now. It's like I don't know what I'm supposed to draw.
I
And
think
this
we.
was yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say so I sort of ended up with this image of sort of like it's really okay, it's a guy looking out the window, but it's just like there's really nothing else going on. And like afterwards, I just have long periods where I just didn't know what to draw.
I think we
But yeah,
both had this idea that we have to get better. Like we're not good enough, but there wasn't as much of an understanding of, okay, well, what do you want to do? And I think for some people it's a bit easier because they're so clear in their focus. Like maybe from a young age they know I want to be like maybe when they're 5 years old they see a Disney movie and like that's what I want to do. I want to be an animator. I want to draw like that. And then the rest of their life is just sort of finding that and becoming that. But I know for myself it was never like that. Like I knew I wanted to be good, but I didn't know much more beyond that. I didn't know like, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to be a character designer? I don't know. Sure, I guess if I can do it, I guess if
yeah,
I can do a
yeah.
good job, I don't know.
Yeah, for me, I think it was very similar as well. Like when I was young, like I've always been drawing. But the thing is, it's just like I never really thought of myself, oh, I'm going to be a professional artist. There was even a point where I was just like, I kind of gave up. Like in my high school years, where it's just like, oh, well, I'm not going to be anything professional. There's people that are way better out there. And even during VFS, I don't think I was really being honest with myself. Because it's like, oh, you're going to be an animator. Oh, you're going to do this. It's just, no, I just sort of stumbled into it. And later on, when I was thinking, oh, I could be a director or a concept artist or something like that, it was all very much based on ego, and it wasn't really being honest. It was just like art was just sort of the thing that I was good at, so I just happened to be doing it.
Yeah.
And yeah, that really shows, I think, because when you're just open ended like that, then everything's possible, and if everything's possible, then you're lost in the ocean.
Hmm.
It's what ended up with my earlier work. Oh, I did some anatomy stuff. Oh, let me do this cartoon stuff. Let me try caricature stuff. It's just like it was just wandering in the dark, basically.
Didn't you have a story of how you went? You took like a class trip to a video game studio or something.
Yeah, I think I was 14 when I first I joined some sort of job program for the YMCA, and then they took me to EA, and then they showed me around of like working in a studio. They gave me a tour of some stuff. They gave me a talk about like the number one thing you need to be worried about is, oh, how can you work in a team and that kind of stuff. And I just remember being young, that sort of like that never really appealed to me. Just like, oh, I guess this is what the industry is like.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is just my stuff, the last few images, and I was in the same boat as you, just thinking like, well, what do I do? I guess I should get good with graphic design. How am I going to do that? And colors and stuff. It's like, oh, maybe if I do some kind of really simple images, and maybe that will help somehow. And I think this was in my portfolio as well. For like, because it's like, okay, you need a portfolio of what? I don't know. And it's something I encounter a lot with people nowadays as well, who send me emails and like they're very lost and they don't know what to do. And it's like, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I also did some figure drawing stuff. I think we kept up figure drawing, right?
Yeah. We went to like this basic inquiry. Is that what it's called? Yeah, and it was just a life drawing place. And then we go over there, and then we keep up our drawings because that's what we did in VFS, and we learned a lot through life drawing. You know?
Yeah. And like this is just again keeping up the caricature skill of. I mean, it's so different from what you're doing. And when I look at I remember at the time, just like I would have given this up in an instant to be able to do what you could do. It's like, oh, I can do values, so I can, like, yeah, it just didn't feel that cool. And this is when I was trying to push the life drawing to have more life, more caricature as well. Just some more. And this was just a character design because I figured, okay, what is character design? I guess it's just making a character up, right? And I want it to be original. I want it to be unique. I want it to have a voice. But it's so far from the truth because what you really need to do, if, let's say you want to be a character designer, well, what do you like? Let's say you watch Ice Age or something. And it's like, oh, I really like this film. It's like, okay, so you look up the character designer of that movie. Oh, you see Peter DeSev's work. You look at what does character design look like. Oh, it's a bunch of images exploring a character, and then once you found the character, doing turnarounds. You know, like what do they look like from the front? What do they look like from the side? What do they look like from the back? What is this person's story? For me, it wasn't that. It was almost like I just want to experiment and oh yeah, what would he look like? Oh, maybe this color would look better, and then yeah, put it in. Like, just rendered it because, oh yeah, he has a radish head or a turnip. I think it's a white radish, and just stupid. Like, it doesn't make any sense. And I still included it in my portfolio at the time.
Yeah.
And then I guess this is one of yours again.
Yeah. It's just even I remember in a way. It's like, oh, I guess I'll do anatomy, but then it's just like. It's the same thing. It's something that, like I don't like. This doesn't even constitute as a study. It's just some random drawing done on a random spur of the moment, thinking that I'm going to be learning something.
Yeah.
You know, it's just one drawing, and just like looking back on it, this is like, man, this is totally unacceptable in terms of learning, because it's sort of like I didn't really accomplish anything with that.
Yeah. This one's awesome though. I still like this. Like, whoa. Just
I was looking at this and I was just like, that's not bad.
It's not. It's really good.
Yeah, like, man, it took me a long time to try to do this one, though. It was really difficult.
Yeah, I remember how much... Like, I think at this time you were talking I don't know if you had just like recently seen Seller FCP's work,
Mm.
but you were talking about how you wanted to get into painting, and you wanted to be able to paint. And
Yeah, yeah. And I think I remember why I stopped working on it because it's like I'm doing it and then I try to I don't know, it's just like I'm trying to add details. I'm trying to think of like, oh, what to do next, and I literally could not do it. It's just like
hmm,
this is as far as I could take it. I don't know what else I could add without making it worse.
hmm,
Yeah. So I guess I just sort of stopped working on it at some point.
man. And then another sketch.
Yeah, I guess this was sort of like a yeah, it's just some creature grinding its teeth. Maybe it's sort of a unconscious expression of what I was feeling at the time, just like not knowing what to do, doing stuff, not really being into it, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I remember this. This was one of the things that there's this school in Toronto. I'm not sure what
Sheridan.
Sheridan. Yes, that's what it was. Um, and they had an open house, and then it's just like, oh, why don't I should try to do some stuff, just so it's like I could go there and show some of the people my work, and then that sort of motivated me for a little while, and I think that's looking back on it, it's one of those things where I realized that was an external motivation. It's like, oh, let me hype myself up for this thing to
Mm-hmm.
to try to impress these other people because oh, this is what you should do. So then I did this kind of I just did this just to sort of like have something to show, which isn't when I think back on it, it's just like that's not really a good way to motivate yourself for work. Trying to trick yourself into thinking you're going to do something.
Yeah, I've done that plenty of times though.
Yeah, it's not necessarily healthy. And this is just sort of like, oh, let me just try a different color. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Okay, and so
it's really
here.
it's really unprofessional looking. It's very messy, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it just feels like, oh, what am I trying to accomplish here? This is once again when I was trying to do a sort of a master study of Bugaro. There's so many things wrong with it. Like I still really haven't learned much about painting, but I can tell that just like the size is wrong. It's not accurate. Um, the skin looks more metal than anything else. And once again, this is just sort of stumbling in the dark. I guess I'll do this.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'll try. Well, this is what some other artists are doing. Oh, they're doing master studies. Well, I guess I'll do that. But it's just like, in the end, it's not really accomplishing anything. And it's only one painting. Same thing with this. Like,
Yeah.
what am I trying to accomplish here?
Like if you do these, you're kind of supposed to take it to the completion, but it's a lot of like I just remember being very confused when you were
Yeah,
doing these. Like, wait,
yeah.
what are you? I guess.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, and it's just I couldn't even finish it. It's just I kept doodling with this thing, trying to make it, finish it to completion, but I just couldn't do it.
hmm,
Like I didn't know how, and it's just like looking back on it now, it's like I really didn't learn anything. You know, this was I think this is when like it happens it's very rare. I remember during this time where it's just sort of like, because sometimes I might have a feeling of I feel as though there's something I want to draw. There's the emotion and the intuition is starting to they're aligned, and
hmm,
it's just like okay, now I can try to do something with this. And this is one of those times I made this composition because I had like this image in my head and I wanted to do it, and this was sort of like the thumbnail, and this was more exploration.
mm. So
Yeah.
this one was digital, I guess, and this or were they both traditional, and then you scan them in, and then
Go back
or
to the previous one. Let me take a look at that.
oh no, this looks
Uh,
digital.
I think no. I see some lines. Some
Oh
lines
yeah,
are
yeah,
traditional. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
yeah,
see that. I see that. Yeah. So
yeah.
then this is another version. I did some thumbnails and I did this one,
Hmm,
and my abilities allowed me to take it up to this point.
hmm,
But I remember further down the line, it's just sort of like it's this thing where even if my intuition and my emotions are lining up, like oh that part can go through, but my capabilities might not be up to par. So then it might just go dead in the water. But here I was trying to do some more stuff, some more compositions. This is another one where it's just sort of like I just got this image in my head and I had this feeling that I was wanting to express, and then I think this is one of the images.
Man, it's so good when you're not trying to be someone else.
Yeah. Um,
Man.
I think I remember seeing a certain image, and then it's sort of like because I noticed this, like, so even during VFS, when I take a look at some people's works, in a way I can almost steal their energy. And then I think this was one of those times. Because it's just like, at times my work would just look pretty good, and then other times it's just like, no, this is not working at all. And I think this is one of those times.
No, well, I guess this is the earlier sketch.
Yeah, I guess it's a little out of order, but it's just, yeah, but it's like,
So
those are the alternatives.
you had different guys? Like, you're considering having a bunch of guys here?
Yeah, I was really confused. I was remember asking you, it's like, oh, what do you think? Because one, if she just, here's this thing where I found out, it's just like, just playing with the image. Oh, if you add more elements, then it adds to this feel. If you take away elements, what does it feel like? So for example, here, she's sort of like, if she's just by herself, it almost gives off the feeling of being abandoned. But if you have the crowd in there, then it's sort of like she's alone, even though there's other people. It's similar feelings, but it's different at the same time. So yeah, that's something. There's one of the few times where I think all three categories fell into place: intuition, emotion, and capability. But in the end, I still wasn't able to finish it. It's still stuck in the black and white thing.
No,
black and white stage.
That's a pity.
Yeah. Same thing again. I had an image in my head. I drew a thumbnail sketch of it, and then I sort of brought it into the digital stuff. But I wasn't really able to, like, I don't, at the end of it, I don't really know what this was. Sort of like, is he on some sort of clock, like a giant clock or something? And then I just wasn't able to finish it. And this is different view, something.
You like rotated the thing.
Yeah, I rotated the thing, and then I changed the area of gravity. Because it's like, it's just like, oh, what would this look like? Because I was sort of experimenting. It's just like, oh, if I turn it this way and change where the gravity is coming from, then it looks like a completely different thing. Yeah, so there's that.
Oh, boy. So I guess this is now into... I guess we had already not maybe joined Crimson Daggers, but I know I was aware of it. And for me, I was just thinking about, continuing that thing with the character design thing. Like, okay, let me do a character design. And I heard that it's good to show your process. So it's like, okay, so the process is I start with like a rough sketch, then I clean it up a bit, then it's finished, right? You paint it, and it's just super poorly drawn. I mean, even comparing it to your stuff, it's like, man, this is super rough. But I could sort of polish it. It's like, fine, I can add paint. I can hide the fact that it's a pretty bad design. And yeah, more just stupid.
One thing that I really noticed looking back at, like, doing this Crimson Dagger stuff is that, like, we were really confused as what we were supposed to do. So inevitably, in a way, we started looking to other people for answers. Oh, what should we do? I guess we should do this. Yeah.
I think this was even before that, because I don't even think there are people who do things this dumb. But like, there you go, the turnip guy. Oh, you know what this was for? I think the last few pieces, it was for the portfolio. And then, okay, so we heard there was an event. A friend of ours, Samir, he's like, oh, are you going to the Anomaly event? I'm like, what is that? And then I found out, like, on a couple, maybe it was like a day after or a couple days. I mean, the event was to be held like 2 days in the future, and I didn't know about this event. And it was like all these really good artists, Daniel Dochu, Craig Mullins. There are so many of them, and they came to Vancouver, and it was this workshop, and we're like, oh, shoot. And we saw there was a portfolio review. I don't remember how much it cost, but anyway, you could sign up for a portfolio review, and we're like, we should do that because maybe they'll let us know, like, what do we do? Maybe you'll give us some advice, because we were completely lost, just clueless, and it was like, oh, maybe a professional would look at our work and be like, okay, yeah, you know what you need to do is do this or add this or whatever. So we signed up, but we didn't have a portfolio really. It's like, okay, so I guess what do I have? Well, I've done this, yeah, put them in a portfolio. I did this, sure, I guess put it in the portfolio. I had done this as a speed painting for YouTube, okay. I'd done this and this thing,
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, fine, put this. Look, it's a chicken study. Like, oh yeah, let's do a value study. And I was like, because I remember people saying you should put your best work in a portfolio, and it's like, I guess this is pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well,
let me put it in.
yeah, like that's like looking back at it now, like even listening to that, it's just like, oh yeah, I remember we were scrambling to get some of our old works and then creating new works, and we were also doing these tricks of like, oh, make sure you put your best piece first and last, because it's like we were trying to compensate for it. And
Yeah.
then it's just like, oh, let's just do this. Yeah, this will impress them or something like that, or this will make
Well,
it acceptable.
well, it was this thing of I heard something like, oh, you should have 12 to 15 pieces, and it's like, okay, I guess we really got hung up on just the things people were saying, like, you need to
Yeah,
do
yeah,
this. Oh, okay, so that's a rule. Okay, I've got to have this,
yeah.
and sort of missing the big picture. I did this one, and I remember I just tried using 100% opacity. Maybe I used the pencil tool to draw it, and then I got a comment. I think it was you also said you liked this one.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. It's just, oh, this is pretty nice. I
And
like it.
then, yeah, so what I would think is like, oh, because I couldn't see my own work as anything. I didn't know, like, is this good? Is this bad? Is this completely stupid? Is this fine? And people were telling me different things. A lot of people said, like one person in particular was constantly letting me know that, no, this isn't good. And then with you, you would sometimes respond to things. And then with this one, you responded to it. So I'm like, I guess I should include it in my portfolio. And I included this because, hey, caricature, included this one, and these are life drawings you did.
Yeah, these are the things that I try to include into my portfolio. So, oh, this would be acceptable, but it's just like I look at it now. It's just like, nah, this is not acceptable for a portfolio piece.
Yeah, it's like random life drawing.
Yeah, it's like it's sort of like what it's this thing. It's just I included random things, old life drawing or some character pieces.
But
And
I
it's just
think
like,
we heard that too. I think someone
yeah,
told us, oh, include your life drawings.
yeah.
But I
I
think
don't know
that's
if
for character art.
yeah, but that's the thing. It's just sort of like it's like when you put all these kind of things in your portfolio, it's just like what are you trying to say? You know, it's just like this is random. What are you
Yeah,
trying to tell me?
like,
You do random things.
what do you want to be?
Yeah.
Are you a figure artist? Are you, are you an animator? Are you, for me, it was even worse. Like,
Oh God.
was
Yeah,
this,
this was sort of like another. It's just during that time because I don't think I had the pieces like the necessary amount.
yeah,
Yeah, and then just like oh, let me just
scrambling.
scrambling, take some out of my ass and just like oh, let me do whichever one.
Well, it's not bad. It's just the colors are dreadful, but
Yeah,
the
but
the idea isn't so bad.
it's like I look at it now, and it's just sort of like it's just so empty.
Wait, did you include the girl at the train station one, the one that had two figures and then it didn't?
I don't remember. I don't
Man.
think so. Yeah, because it was so unfinished. Oh God, this one, and it's sort of like I tried to like when I was doing the mad scramble, it's just like oh let me just try to do some painting stuff because it's like oh you're supposed to do environments or something, and then I tried to do these ones and I got called out pretty quickly on this because it's just like this looks super rough. It looks like I only did like what 20 minutes on these things, even though it probably wasn't because I was struggling with it. But it's like it's nothing. Like even the next few ones they're nothing. It's like what is this? Like, what are you trying to do here?
Yeah, man, it was. I'll just go through them and then we could
Yeah.
talk. Did you include these ones as well?
No, I don't think these ones were included.
But you did these ones because
Yeah, I
I
did this
know
one.
you had this character. Is he here? No, no.
No.
So
The thing is, like with all those other environments that I was trying to do, it's just like the person that reviewed my portfolio was the one that I specifically remember is Daniel Dochu,
well,
and then
let's talk about how it went. So. There were two guys. John Shindet, at the time, I think he was still an art director at Wizards of the Coast.
Yeah.
And then Daniel Dochu from ArenaNet, who's just, freaking amazing artist. And so we got our portfolios ready, and
yeah, we
what
got that
happened
handed
next?
to us.
Yeah, it was brutal.
Yeah. It's he basically. I think I went first, and then you did. But like for me, he's like he
Daniel
quickly-
Dochu, you mean?
Yeah, Daniel Dochu. He like I went to him first, and then
Uh-huh.
he just sort of flipped through my images, not really commenting. He just sort of like looked at it, look at it, look at it, look at it, and then he just sort of. I don't remember, but I just remember him being like I got this feeling. It's like, oh, you're not impressed at all, and then he very quickly just called me out on those environments that I did. He's just like, what are you trying to do here? Like this is like this is nothing. It's just, oh, I'm trying to prepare for anomaly, and he's just like, fuck anomaly. Like you're not showing anything. This is not how. I don't know. It's just I guess the thing that I remember the most is just like him telling me this is not a portfolio. You got to do some soul searching. You got to figure this stuff out because what you're doing here is not what's going to be accepted into the industry. Like, oh, you say you want to be a concept artist. Nothing here tells me that it's like you're going to be a concept artist. You got what? Random environment images. You got life drawing, some character design. That doesn't
Yeah.
say anything. The only thing that he responded to were I remember the box office worker. Like that one
Hmm.
he responded to, and the one that he liked was Jacques,
Hmm.
the character that yeah. Let's go
No,
back to
this
Jacques.
one. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. He said, "Oh, this is really nice," but then he said, "Even this is sort of like, well, this doesn't really relate to concept art in any way." And it's
Yeah.
just this thing of like, It's like we didn't know anything. We just
Hmm.
said, "Oh, we're just going to do this thing," and then we'll just show it. Oh, yeah, 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 that would be a thing. But no, we were not prepared. We did not know what the reality was.
Like,
You know?
the thing with Daniel Dochu is he was really like when I say this stuff, it might sound harsh, but he seemed to really really care. The expression he had when he was telling me stuff is very concerned, almost like a kind person just looking at your stuff. And then he looked at like this, the caricature, and he told me like this is really good. And then he looked at this stuff and he's like, this is shit. You're this is ugly. This is terrible. There's no idea here. This is just garbage. And I said, so how do I improve on my ideas? And then he just paused and then he's like, you don't. I'm like, but surely there's a way to train ideas. And he's like, no, I'm sorry, it doesn't work that way. You you're pretty much. He's like, he just told me you're in the wrong business. And I said, and he's like, if you want to do the caricature thing, you're fine. But there's no jobs for that I know of. And I said, do you, okay. And I was just super lost. And when I showed my work, because at first I had Daniel Dochu, and then I had John Shindet after. And John Shindet, I think he heard how it was going.
The thing was, I was there. I was pacing back and forth, listening him to Daniel Dochu talking to you. And it's just like, oh shit, this is brutal. And then the what's his name, Jim?
John.
John. He was just pacing back and forth, and he was just like, he wanted to butt into the conversation. He wanted to say, like, because he was actually really worried.
I must have looked pretty
You
shaken.
looked pretty. I think we both were.
Because, like, the thing was, sure, okay, you're going to give me a critique and then you're going to tell me what I need to fix, right? But then when he said things like, you're in the wrong industry, I was like, what do I do with this? Like,
Yeah, I think
you're basically telling me there's no jobs for me. What I'm good at, no one's hiring. And what I am trying to do is utter garbage. And I can't even get better at it. Like, I can't train to be better.
like for you, I think it was more because like for me, what he basically did was saying, you're not really interested. You need to soul search to figure out what you need to do. And they said, oh well, you have two or things. You have some potential with the two pieces that he liked. But for you, it was like that was brutal. Yeah.
But then, like, the one thing he said is like, you can paint, you have the hand skills. And then with John Shindet as well, he's like, oh, you've got hand skills, like you can paint. But with John Shindet, he was a bit more kind about things. Like, I'm not saying Daniel Dochu was mean, because yes, he said my work is shit, but he said it in a really concerned way. Like, it looked on his face, the expression was like, I really wish I could tell you something better. But this isn't good. And at least he's honest. Like, man, he was really honest. He wasn't filling my head with nonsense garbage.
I think that's the thing that I noticed, like just remembering the difference between Daniel Dochu and the Wizards of the Coast guy, John Shindet, right? Yeah, he with John Shindet, like when I talked to him, he basically told me because I went up to him and I was very insecure, and
Mm-hmm.
then he said, "Oh, you should try to be more confident." And basically, he told me ways, like tricks in a way,
Mm-hmm.
to be better in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think with Daniel Dochu, he just sort of I don't know. I guess he just saw behind all that.
Yeah.
It's like he just got to the point. It's just like, I could help you with this. I could give you tips, but what you really need to work on is yourself, your fundamentals. Like, what do you want? Do some soul searching.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's and
Um,
with John. When he was pacing back and forth, I think he was just like he wanted to tell you like some tricks to like
Well, what he
have a
told
better
me is
performance.
like, what you need to do is you need to stop doing all this random stuff and
Hmm.
get yourself an elf, a wizard, like basic Magic the Gathering quality. Or stuff that would work in that thing, like fantasy stuff.
Hmm. Hmm.
A dragon. You got to have your dragons. You got to have your this that. And he gave a long list of like all the things we needed to hit. And so we like I guess the same way we did our portfolio, like, oh yeah, you need 15 pieces. Okay, let's get 15 pieces.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
just did like we came home and then just wrote it down. Like, okay, these are the things we need to do,
Hmm.
and I still like your characters though.
Yeah,
And then yeah, this is still stuff that you had in the portfolio. It's just
yeah,
process. Da, da,
yeah,
da.
yeah.
Yeah, this is from. I remember this was also an
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think this was also included in Anomaly.
yeah.
But
So
basically, like, what we ended up doing was just the same old thing, I guess. It's just like Daniel Dochu just sort of told us straight up, like, we are not prepared, we're not ready, that kind of stuff. But we were still lost at sea, basically. If anything else, we became almost even more desperate. So then
yeah,
it's just like, yeah.
because it was sort of like, well, two things. One thing with my personality is if someone tells me I can't do something,
Hmm.
I almost feel like an urge to prove them wrong. Like,
Hmm.
fine, you may very well think so. I couldn't possibly comment or agree, but anyway, okay. So yeah, okay. So this is a bit. I guess we're doing Crimson Daggers at the same time as this thing happened. Like it was sort of
Yeah.
we're doing this, and then the anomaly thing came up, and then we went back to it. But in Crimson Daggers, what they had was this thing, and Crimson Daggers is this group that Dave Raposa and Daniel Warren formed, where they would just everyone would try and study and get better and become a professional. And
Hmm.
one of the things they had was this thing called blood sports, and they would come up with like practical things to have in a portfolio. And what
Hmm.
they wanted to see is uh, you putting in a lot of work and doing studies and then creating a piece and seeing it to completion. So what we did was this the topic was Legend of Lizards,
Hmm.
and so I did this. I did a bunch of studies, and I thought of the idea for a lizard. It's like an action figure, like you have to design a toy, and my toy was called Queen Elizabeth.
Hmm.
It's not that funny. And yeah, I tried to caricature some lizards too, and then it's like, okay, so I'll have this queen, and what pose should I have? Oh, let's do silhouettes, and did some silhouettes, and then thought of the arrangement on the thing, and this was my first design, and it's like, nah, it's not quite working. It doesn't really look like a toy. Then I thought of this, and like, okay, so the toy would be on the right, and like this is the packaging. To clarify, it's a packaging for a fictional toy for the box. And then I thought this idea, and like, oh, she's like holding the figure in her open hands, and then that was the end thing. And I think I came in second or something because they
I think
also
you
rate
came
it.
in third.
Yeah, and they also rate like, oh, who got whatever, like who did a good job. But they made it so you had to do a bunch of studies. Like it doesn't matter if you're very good. What matters is that you put in a lot of work. So
Yeah.
we really also got kind of into that world as well, like very heavily actually.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
really influenced by, oh, there's this group of people who are working really hard, and what we didn't have was a direction, and what they seemed to all have was a very strong direction of where they wanted to go. Everybody seemed like they knew, oh, we want to be illustrators, we want to be in the industry, and it's like, well, sure, that looks cool, that looks fine. What do we do?
Yeah, I think one of the things is just that when you see people that have these success stories in a way, because like with Raposa, he kind of succeeded basically.
Well, he
got
did.
into the
He did.
yeah. He succeeded. He got into the industry. He was popular. He was on demand, and he knew things. And then what happens is that when you're just completely lost, you'll take anything. But if you see somebody who has an almost similar story to you, because that's what Raposa was, he's sort of like, he just started off doing things. He didn't really know what he was going to do. He was just going to do it. And then it's like not only was he kind of relevant to what we were feeling at the time, but also he became successful and he got other followers. And then all of that builds into this hype, and they just sort of like, I guess I'll do that because he seems to be successful. You become very vulnerable to that.
Yeah. This is some composition studies I was doing, and it's kind of like I would still do random things like, oh yeah, maybe I should try this because maybe this will help me get better. And I particularly like these two because of the colors. It's like, okay, these colors are interesting. I liked using, like, okay, so you have, again, it's some stupid fan art, but you have Green Lantern. I don't know who this character is. It's probably a character I just probably forgot. And Batman, but you had the green and then this pink, and it just contrasted so much. It doesn't make any sense really, but I liked that. This one too, I liked the greenish sky thing. Just the colors really were like, oh, I like that. Even with this orc guy, I put in this pink, and it's like I like to see really strange colors that don't quite belong but seem very interesting. But then I didn't do anything with it. Like, that's the thing that I didn't understand at this point. It's like, fine, if you really like this, do you really want to do environments first, or do you want to do characters and then do a lot of it? Like, this should be your thing. This was for, we had this thing called Royal Fellas, which was a weekly. Oh, and I was streaming. At this time, I was streaming every single day on live stream. I would wake up, and a few of us were doing this, because Dave started this, where every day he had the schedule. He would get on, and then he would do studies and stream them. And so a lot of people started following, and there were a few of us who woke up consecutively. Marius, Bota, John Silva, I think Sycra was doing stuff, and so on the weekends we all got together and did this thing of, we just took, I don't know if we took prompts or what it was, but we ended up just doing all sorts of things. And this is your entry into one of the Bloodsport challenges, right?
Yeah.
This was like a Miyazaki poster. You had to do.
There was a multiple one. Like there was the ones that like you did. It was it was for an action figure and stuff like that. This was for a movie poster.
Yeah, this was a different. I don't know if it was every week or every. No, I think it was every month. It was a different challenge, and yeah.
And this is just one of the things that I did, and that just seemed to be the sort of thing. Oh, you just do the challenges. Oh, this is what you do to get good. Because that's what they made it out to be. It's just like, oh, we're doing this so people can get good, so they can get help and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
God, this image is terrible. It just keeps on getting worse.
Yeah, and these are the studies you posted?
Yeah. I don't know. I think at one point, like the one on the top right, that's actually a better image, I think. But because I kind of got into my head, oh, I should be accurate or something. And this is something that I noticed. It's just like I might choose the worst a worse decision just because I thought it was supposed to be the image was supposed to be a certain way. So I thought, oh, well, I should make a poster that's accurate to the movie. The movie never had a night scene like the one on the top right, but it's sort of like. But the image that I ended up going with is actually a lot worse.
Yeah. And like you compare this to what you were doing before, like that cityscape that was really cool that you couldn't quite finish, or the person at the subway, or Jacques, or any of the things that you actually cared about. And they were a really high level, in my opinion anyway, at least appealing. They're really, really appealing. And then you look at this and it's like, man, where did it go?
Yeah, oh God.
There's no gesture even. Like, the things you're good at aren't even shown.
Yeah, it's very... like this image just feels super pretentious for some reason, like to me, because I think maybe I was just trying to be more artistic. It's like, oh, they're looking into the camera, oh, they're just standing there, oh, they're waiting for the train. And the other thing is just, I don't know, it's like I guess I just wasn't being honest with myself when I was doing this picture.
Yeah.
It's because it's like, oh, this is for blood sports, oh, this is for this poster, oh, I gotta be professional.
Yeah.
And it's just like it's not something that I would do.
Yeah. It's really.
We really tricked ourselves because we were just so desperate for a direction, and it's just like,
Yeah.
oh, this worked for these people, it must work for us.
Yeah. Because I think the reality is, when I looked at the stuff, like, Dave was into Magic cards, and that was his job. And, like, guys like Brad Rigney, they were into Magic cards. But for myself, like, I never grew up with Magic cards. I never played them. But it seemed like, oh, this is where the jobs are, like trading cards. And trading card game things were really big. They still, I don't know if they still are, but they got even bigger once the mobile phone company started, like card games on mobile phones. So it's like, okay, there's a big market here, as opposed to, what Daniel Dochu said about my caricature, like, there is no industry here. Like, what are you going to do? And so this, I was also doing the Miyazaki film. Bob picked Spirited Away. I picked Porco Rosso. So here's some thumbnails. I mean, this one's not bad. I kind of like it.
Yeah, the graphics, it's dance graphic design.
It's not terrible. And then here's some studies. Did a study of a cosplayer in a Porco Rosso suit. And then this is the final. And
But here you can sort of see that we were being really influenced by Raposa. Like, going back to the previous image, there's the one that's really graphic looking, and it's just like, it's like if you went with that, it's like that's completely fine. But because with Dave and Dan, they were very much about like the rendering in a way. Like with Dave especially, like his work looks really rendered, and then sort of like we kind of got lost in that in a way. Like, even with this.
Yeah, and like even putting my website as like, oh yeah, you're supposed to do this, and and like, okay, I don't know. I guess it's not, because I don't really like it. But then when I zoom in, it's like, oh well, that's pretty nice. The way you rendered that is pretty good. But really, I don't. I guess it's very hard to convey exactly how panicking we were, like panicky we were so nervous. We were like,
yeah,
what do we do? I don't know. This is another one of the Royal Fellas where we met every weekend, and we did a thing together, and this was done in MS Paint, because that was the challenge of the thing, like, oh, do a painting in MS Paint.
Yeah, you know what, like, I sort of didn't really realize until we were looking at the stuff, but it's just like in VFS they would tell you all sorts of tricks about, like, oh, creating your portfolio, making sure creating a resume of all things to get into a studio. And then we've talked about before, where it's just sort of like people would go into VFS thinking they would become a really good animator like Glenn King, or a concept artist, or a director or something, and they came out just being really desperate. And in a way, we were kind of like as that way as well, except we were doing it with the magic cards and then the illustrations and the blood sports. We were doing the same thing. Yeah,
I guess it's because like we could. It was easier to say like, oh, but I'm not interested in being an animator. But then when you look at like, I don't know how to. It feels really lame to admit it, but I guess I'm just admitting the truth that I was super intimidated, but also influenced for a short time by this whole crowd. Like in conceptart.org, you had people who were like. Sort of more famous. You had like Wes Burt and Hannes Augenfleger. You had Dave Raposa, obviously, Cryptcrawler, Brad Rigney, and they were coming out and they were sort of doing similar genres of things. Marko Djurjevic, and it's like, okay, you just look at it and it's like, oh, that's cool. Like, I look at it and I think it's cool. But what I was into was more like anime stuff. But anime stuff was sort of looked down on, like, oh, that's the stuff you grow out of. It's like, oh yeah, oh, you do anime drawings when you're 13, and then you decide you want to be a professional artist, and you grow the fuck up, and you start doing serious work. You learn realism, and oh, this is actually good rendering and good execution and stuff, and like this again, another Royal Fellas thing, just completely lost. That's the only way I can describe it, is just super lost.
Yeah. And it became this thing where it's just sort of like we were really forcing ourselves to believe in this, because it's like one thing is that the people that we were looking at was like they were more skilled than us.
Yeah.
But so then we fooled ourselves, even though it's just, I remember working on these things and I was just sort of like, I was just feeling miserable. Man, like this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Oh, we should get good. Yeah. And I remember us talking, just sort of like, oh, Dan and Dave went through this gauntlet of just hardcore work. That's what we should be doing, even if we don't like it, because they probably didn't like it at the time. But it's just like, no, we were just fooling ourselves. We were really miserable doing this kind of stuff.
Yeah,
and
it's
because of that, we weren't doing as nearly as much as we should.
It's that no pain, no gain thing, because it's like, work is supposed to be hard, because we felt it was hard. We felt like we're resisting this, like this doesn't feel good. But they all talk about, well, it's not supposed to feel good. This is when you get better. This is when you develop. But actually, it's not supposed to feel that bad either. It's not so like, I want to just
go ahead.
Gouge my eyeballs out. It's not supposed to be this brutal. It's actually supposed to be like, yes, it's work, but you still should feel good. It should be like, I have this dream. I'm going towards something, not I want to be an artist. This is the only thing that's going to pay. I have no alternative, because I put all my eggs in one basket. Like and they say this is a good thing, like, don't have any plan B. And I had no plan B. So it's like, I am an artist or I'm homeless. So if like the urgency was there, like, get good, do what people are doing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just that feeling. It's like, looking back on it, it's just another extreme. And with extremes, okay, you might get something. You might even get an extreme benefit. But with us, we didn't get that. We just got worse. But one thing that we did get was just this huge cost in energy. It's like, man, the cost was huge. We were just feeling miserable at this time. And I think it's just a balancing act, It's like, if it's too hard, then you're hurting yourself. You're not really achieving anything except towards your own destruction in a way. And and I think this is really important, we were creating a bad relationship with art. It's sort of like we were doing this thing, and just what it's really happening is it's reinforcing this negative feeling to our subconsciousness. Oh, you know that thing you should be doing, that thing that's going to be your career. Yeah, you're going to feel really bad when you do it. You're just going to feel absolutely miserable, and it's just like, that's not a good thing. And I think that's something to be considered as well. It's like, what is your relationship with art? Are you being honest with yourself with it? Are you enjoying it? Are you hating it? Like, are you going in a wrong direction? Just like, that's something I don't think that's really talked about very often.
And I think it was also like, because everyone else seems to like it, it was almost like, but okay, so this must be good. Everyone likes this, It's like if you went to a restaurant, everyone's saying, the food is great, and you try it, and the food to you tastes really bad. You're almost going to wonder, like, wait, is it just me? Maybe something's wrong with me. Maybe the food is really good. And for me, I had a lot of self-doubt. So just being confident, like if I had just said, I'm not into this, I'm going to do my own thing. And if I had that, sense about, okay, just believe in yourself and you can do it and get it done, I probably would have been okay. But instead, I was doing stuff like this on the Royal Fellas. And people still liked it. They're like, oh, that's cool. But for me, it was like, this is nonsense. Here's another Bloodsport challenge. In this one, we were supposed to imagine a creature that lives in an environment, and then a hunter that hunts this creature and makes armor based on the creature they hunt. So,
this was based on Monster Hunter.
And so I picked this guy, and he hunts this creature, and he goes into like the sulfur area, and they want to mine they're sulfur miners. I think I found that would be interesting. And he puts the sulfur in a backpack in these baskets, and he wears it on his back, and then when he's carrying it, he carries it on his spear, and they encounter these creatures, and they hunt them. Another Royal Fellas thing, and Yeah, and then it turns into armor, and it's like, oh, this is him wearing the armor, and it's super ugly. But again, if you remember how I was talking in my previous video about how I wasn't good at imagination stuff. I was okay at drawing realistically, but when it's like combining imagination and realism, I really struggled. It's like, okay, you have to take these things that are imaginary, but paint them as if they're realistic. How do you do that? And I didn't have enough fundamentals. I didn't even fully understand what those were. I thought like, oh, well, fundamentals are, drawing, and I could recite them. I could tell you, oh, it's proportion, it's placement, it's this and that, but it's not the same as understanding what is that missing thing. Like, why is it so hard for me to do this and so easy for someone else who might not even be capable of rendering so well? And what I didn't understand was really the intuition part of it, because I didn't use any intuition. I was using pretty much all analysis, and that's not good for art. And then here's the creature in the middle, the guy before he's hunted, after he's hunted. And this creature is what I included in my anomaly portfolio, which Daniel Dochu just like, this is shit. He looked at it like, this is shit. I'm like, oh no, it's shit. I worked on this.
No. Oh, God.
Okay, so I think this is actually when we started taking John Chindet's advice and we're creating things. Because I know we had a list, and it was like, there's like a sorceress. There's one of them was a dragon. I wonder if this could be the dragon, or else it might have been like the monster, like a giant monster.
Yeah. This could have been one of those.
Yeah.
Because I do remember it's sort of like this. This was, I don't know. This was something.
Yeah.
So that might have been it. But yeah, okay. So this is one of the things that like, okay,
Oh.
we should start checking off the list.
I also remember we came up with this idea, and it was that it was to work together, because at first what we had been doing is we're just both doing our own thing and trying to make it fun, and it was miserable. And then we decided, like, well, when did we have fun? And in animation school, one of the classes was acting class, and it's I guess it's to get just more well-rounded, be able to put some acting into your characters. But that was the first time I was doing real. I think that's the first time I started actually talking to you more. We did these skits, these acting skits, and it was a lot of fun. And then we started doing stuff with animation where it's like, oh, let's figure stuff out after school. We were just like trying to figure stuff out, seeing what artists we liked. Like, oh, we studied Glenn Keane, and I remember like that was fun. That period was fun, and so I thought like, oh, I think that's fun. And then I started thinking like, what if we just worked as if we're a mini studio? Like, oh, just two people, and maybe we could just I don't know. And you came up with the name Cell Pod, and like, okay, sure, it's we'll call ourselves Cell Pod and do this this studio thing and just work together, because we figured, okay, it's miserable for both of us, but if we're both working together, maybe it'll be fun in that we can have someone to bitch and moan to. Oh man, this sucks. Oh yeah, I know.
yeah, it's so miserable, isn't it? Yeah, it totally is.
And then somehow it became like, it actually worked though. It became kind of more fun because it was shared. The suffering was shared.
Misery loves company.
Yeah. So this is probably another idea. Maybe this was like an undead idea, because one of our ideas was undead.
Yeah.
I don't know what these are. Just not sure. Some thumbnails.
I think what it was is that okay, go back to the undead stuff. I think what it was is, okay, we should create portfolios for magic cards, and then I think I remember now. I was doing those things, and then the ratio I was using was wrong, and then you did these. It's like possibly, I think these were ideas about like to do cards or something. Yeah, I think that's what it is. Yeah,
because they use a 4:5 ratio, I think. I think it was that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and these are more things like just ideas for thumbnails that we could turn into cards and have this portfolio that we could take to someone like John Chindet, and they'd be able to say like, oh yeah, you've got everything you need. Yeah, and I did like this piece, just whatever. Oh, let's have an angel with like a sword thing. I mean, the drawing's terrible. These wings are coming out of nowhere. This isn't structurally correct, but
Yeah.
hey, it's rendered and it's got stuff. And this was one of your thumbnails that I guess you did the drawing, and then and we're also working on perspective a lot. And then
Yeah.
I think you took it to this level, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you sent it to me and I started coloring it. And then as I'm coloring it, I realized this is really, really difficult because
Yeah.
I couldn't understand some of the forms and how to deal with it.
Yeah. It's also, I think, just during this time we were. I think this is later on when, like this specifically is later on when we were working together, but it's this thing like we both had problems. Like I for one, it's just like okay, I some of the things that I drew on here, I understood what they were. But when I sent it to you, you didn't know what it was. So it's just like, what's going on here? What is this image? So it's just like my fundamentals were lacking. That in turn made it more difficult for you to finish the image as well.
Yeah, because I couldn't just use intuition and like, oh, I see what you were trying to do. Okay, let me just paint it good enough. My thing was all very structured. Like, oh, okay, well, if the light's coming from this direction, then it's going to cast on this plane and stuff. And it was this like part of our idea was that you were really good at sketches and thumbnails and stuff, and I was good at polishing and making something look realistic. So why don't we combine this? Instead of me doing horrible sketches and then polishing them, I could have a good base with your like really good compositions, and you could focus on what you're good at. I could focus on what I'm good at, and maybe combined we could create like really good work that neither of us could do.
Yeah.
So here's some more thumbnails, and here's I guess it's a guy with an axe.
I think he has like a pole arm or something, a shield, some Viking character, I guess.
Yeah, just some more
Yeah,
thumbnail
just
characters.
just random ideas, I suppose.
But at least it was in a fantasy setting. There's
Yeah.
that. At least it's not completely a guy with a radish for a head.
Well, at that point, well, this was after the whole anomaly thing, so we did get a bit more direction. So I don't know what this one was for specifically, but I guess it was just some weird animal creature that I was drawing.
Okay, and then this one, you sent this to me, and okay, what did you think it was supposed to be first,
Like,
or
it
what
was
did
some
you
sort of
draw it
rock.
as?
Yeah, it was like a rock golem or something, and then
Where's the
there's a
head?
tree on, like the, uh, yeah, like
Oh, it's
you're
here.
really close. Yeah, that's the face. That's the face.
Oh, yeah. So okay, so this is I guess this is the back. This is the arm. Oh no, this is the arm.
Yeah.
And yeah, you sent
That's the
this to
arm.
me, and then I was like, "Oh, that's a cool crab creature," and you're like, "What crab creature?"
But that's the thing. It's sort of like this is already this we didn't realize it at the time. Well, at least I didn't. And then, but it was revealing. It's just like, oh, this would be the beginning of our problems because like, just because you understand what you're drawing, this doesn't mean the other person does. But
Yeah.
something good did come out of this, though.
Yeah. So I think I sent this to you. Like, this is what I saw. Like, oh, this is the character. Yeah, I saw these as like teeth. I saw these as eyes, and
Yeah.
I saw these as like crab legs. So
Yeah,
I drew it like, oh yeah, this is the crab I'm looking at, and you're like, okay, I'll go with that.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And so you did this picture then of
Yeah.
this crab creature.
Yeah.
So this is the image you sent me, and it's
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, I can do something with this. And
Yeah.
so I did this, and it's
Yeah,
like, okay, yeah. And then it was just refine it. So okay,
Yeah.
let's make this better. Let's add stuff. So I changed it from a tree. I thought, okay, maybe it's like a city.
I remember, I remember this specifically because we were talking about, 'cause, like at this point we were still sort of like in the Crimson Daggers mode. It's just like, oh, everything needs to have a purpose. We're in concept art mode, and so with this, oh, it's just a treat. But with this, it's sort of like there's like these almost like the way I see it is sort of like you explain it to me. If this crab migrates, so then sometimes it would just go into deeper water areas, and then it would just fill in all the cracks on the landscapes, and those would become rivers, and then that's how those people would live in a way. So it's just like, oh, this was really cool, and I think we got some really good responses from this. I think this is, we had one more piece before this, that sort of gave us the idea of working together. But this is what really cemented it. It's just like, oh, we should definitely work together.
Yeah, because I felt like, well, I couldn't have come up with this on my own.
Yeah.
But with even your thumbnail, it wasn't that complicated or detailed. But it's
Yeah.
like, oh, you can turn it into something. So I turned it into this, and it's like, I didn't hate it. I thought like, oh, okay, this is something. And I showed it. At this point, I found that. Oh man, the name escapes me. But Daryl Mandrick. Yeah, Daryl Mandrick was. He also lives in Vancouver, and I was in Vancouver at the time, and so I found that I asked if he taught private lessons, and he did, and they're pretty expensive, so I could only afford to take one. But I showed him this piece, and he was like, okay, this is okay, but it's a bit weird, and your drawing isn't that good. This stuff is wrong. And then he taught me about you should make it more have a light shape and then dark shape and then a light, dark, light, dark, light, dark, and lead the eye better. So that was something I got. And yeah, just, polishing, trying to, like this house, if it's this big, well, how big is he? Oh, wait, this house is sort of in the same thing as this. It can't be. It's too big, so make it smaller. Just stuff like that, And so this was the final, and working out the planes of things like, oh, yeah, maybe this is a hill, and it bends down. There's a river, and there's this thing. So you see this, and it's like, oh yeah, this is good, but it doesn't come from this. It came from some mistaken rock golem.
In this case, it worked out for us, but in future things, it was just like it would become a problem.
Yeah.
But
so,
so this, I think, this is what really started off of our idea of working with each other. Because I did a sketch of this. I'm not sure if I have it anymore, but it's like I did something like this, and then you saw it, and it's just like, oh, well, this could be more finished, and then you did this, and then it's just like, oh, we should work together. And that's when we really started working, because we had that idea of working together for a while, but it never really happened until this image.
So then it's like, okay, it got a bit more polished, and then I think this one we kept going back and forth, right?
Yeah.
Like I worked on it, then I sent it to you, then you worked on it, then you sent it to me, then I don't know.
Yeah. There's basically like we had different ideas of what things would be.
Yeah. And then eventually, it got to this. So it's like, okay, it's sort of finished. It was, in a way, it was something that I couldn't have done by myself, and it was something that you couldn't have done by yourself. So it's like, okay, so you're doing better work, but at the same time, it's not as, like, it doesn't have my strength, and it doesn't have your strength purely displayed, because it's like, oh, it's not as gestural as you would have it, and it's not as polished as I would have it. So it seemed like this is okay. Maybe this is a good idea to work together.
Because we were both like, we like you said, we couldn't have done that image without working together. And so that's what it was. We lost like the price was that it wasn't really either of us individually, but it's like what we gained was just like, okay, this is more finished. And
it was a hell of a lot more fun working with a partner who was you could talk to and stuff, because I think these partnership things, they sound nice, and I've tried to work with people before, but it usually doesn't go well. To be a team, to have someone that it's like, oh, you've got to have mutual respect, and then you've got to really have a good working relationship, that it's like, oh, you speak the same language, you don't really fight about things. It's more like, oh, I see this, you might question like, oh, why did you make this decision? But then once it's explained, it's like, okay, and then you can have a good chat and actually get to the bottom, like, oh, is this something we want to do or not? So I think that was really good. At least we were working in a good team. And these were more ideas. Like, I guess this is a big dragonish monster thing.
At this point, I really didn't know how to draw a dragon, and it kind of showed.
And another idea, I guess this is also a dragon. More designs.
At this point, when we were doing cards, I think. That's what we were
doing. No, I think this was before. This is when we were still figuring stuff out, because I remember we had a few cards done before we actually got our first job. So yeah, these were dragon things you were doing,
Yeah.
the different ideas, and this is one I did, and yeah, I did this thing, and then
Yeah.
oh, you turned it into this,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I thought this was really cool as an idea. Like, oh yeah, it's a dragon. It swoops down, comes onto this this castle place, and then it's just gonna like fry everybody. So
Yeah. 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 It's gonna completely destroy the place.
got to this, and then I think this is when you sent it to me, and then I like added stuff to it. It's like, okay, so now it's got some color to it, got some value, and then we just went like more detail, more detail, more detail, more detail, changing like this guy's hat and stuff. And I guess near the end it was that. Oh, and we thought of like, this is some of the things like, oh, I would send you, oh, these are my ideas, what do you think? And then
I think, yeah, at that period, we were really just sort of bouncing ideas back and forth. That was really one of the things that we were able to enjoy. Just like, oh, what do you think of this? Well, what do you think of that kind of stuff.
And a lot of it was just discovering, because we were looking at Dave Raposa a lot, and kind of like, how does he do things? And
yeah, this was when we really started figuring out about analysis. Just like, what is this person doing? How can we get this ability that they're, like, what technique are they using? That kind of stuff. That's where really started off the idea of analysis.
Yeah, like you can see here, I sort of photo bashed, like I stuck a bunch of photos and then made it into nothing. Because I think Feng Zhu does this, but a lot of people were doing this at the time. And then you make it into something. So it's like, okay, I turned this into this image. And then I turned it into this image because I thought, I don't know why I didn't like this one, but anyway, I thought, oh, let's just make it more heartwarming or something. That's a girl with a cat. Okay. And then, oh, yeah. So this one was really inspired by Daniel Dochu because as much as he, called us out on
asshole.
he's very good, and I really liked his works because they have this huge epic feel to it. And I think you sent me this, and I was like, whoa, this is a good idea. Yeah, this looks cool. So I really like these type of shapes that you're using. Like, oh yeah, these massive sail things, and yeah, it's got water coming down. Cool. And so somehow it turned into this.
Yeah.
This is all you, man, because I can never.
Yeah, this goes back to the thing, like, I was just looking at Dochu stuff, and it's just like, at certain points, I still don't know how I'm doing it. Like, that's the thing with intuition. It's just like, there's still a lot of things that I don't really know, like, how it's doing. But one of them is just like looking at pieces of art and just somehow stealing the energy, like looking at the shapes. It's just, and just, I don't know. It's like the intention or the energy that the artist was using to make this image, I can somehow take that and transfer it into my own work. And yeah, this is what happened.
So, yeah, you gave these, and we're thinking like there's these vehicle things that like go down this river or canal or something, and this is like a dam, and so we're just composition, how do we do this, and just some more, and then I guess this is where we ended up, and this was a rough, I put in some color, I put in some texture, it's like, okay, and then from here it went to this, and it went to this, some more stuff, and then this, and I guess this is where it ended.
Yeah, I think because as I was doing this, because I was handling a lot of the perspective stuff on this thing, but it's this thing that we just, well, at least I really noticed it, and I think you did as well. But it's just like we're doing these big, almost ambitious images, and it's just like our capabilities were not, or at least mine, I wasn't able to finish it.
Oh, mine too. It was like we're just fighting it, and it was very hard. Like, oh, you take this idea that's really cool, and you're not really doing it justice because you're kind of fighting yourself. But even now, when I look at this, it's not bad. It's got a lot of potential. It could be something cool.
Yeah, it's just that we weren't able to put, because I remember it's just like going back and forth, and it's just like something just isn't working anymore, and we just
Yeah.
kept doing it, and it's just like, and sometimes we would notice mistakes and we would fix it, but then that just somehow, I don't know, just got kind of got worse in some ways.
Yeah, and like the back and forth thing, it got a bit tiring because
Yeah, yeah.
with me, and I think it's the same for you. We sort of have like this initial energy, and
Mhm.
oh, it's a cool idea. Okay, let's do it. And then it dries up pretty quickly. It's hard to like. I don't have a lot of stamina. When
Yeah,
it
me
comes to
either.
caricature, it's like okay, sure. I usually spend about 15 to 18 hours on a very finished caricature to make it look real. But
Mhm.
the amount of heavy lifting in like the first hour, I'll have the thumbnail. In the first 3 hours, I'll have pretty much the image, and it just needs to be like the black and white parts done, the color parts in place, and now it's just polish. And then I would spend the next 12 hours just detailing, but that's not intense in terms of brain activity. It's actually pretty easy. It's almost like you just zone out and paint. So I could say like, oh yeah, I painted for 15 hours today. It's like, yeah, but it didn't feel like that. It felt like I did a 3 hours of work and then 12 hours of just like mindlessly just noodling, polishing, detailing, whatever.
Yeah. I think like we didn't realize it at the time, but it's just like coming to realize which because we both had just such low staminas. Like
Hmm.
we did not have much energy when it comes to doing this stuff. And it's just like I remember it's just like sometimes I'd be really hyped up. That's actually for me it was even worse if I got hyped up because if I got hyped up, I think I have this burst of energy. But then after it runs out, I don't just run out. I crash, and it's like I just stop caring. It's just
Yeah.
like there could be a deadline for
Yeah.
all anybody could care. And it's just like I just don't care. Like
Super frustrating, super
yeah,
hard to deal
it's
with. I was like, Jeff, I mean, Bob, is this done?
is it done? And it's just
Is
and I'm
it
just like
done?
yeah, but it's just at the crashing point. It's just I just like I need to do this. I need to do this. But it's just like I just did not have the energy or the effort to care to
Yeah,
push myself, and it shows. You know?
yeah. I guess more thumbnails of a looks like a tornado or something touching down,
Yeah,
but I don't know.
yeah. For it's just like these. I think they were like these giant structures that
Hmm.
are like that are coming out from the clouds and touching the ground and stuff like that. Like it's this thing where it's just like I have these epic images in my head, but I just couldn't do it. You
Hmm.
know? And then it's sort of like it's the same thing. I get hyped up, and then I just crash and I just stop caring.
Yeah. Oh, this was the first
Yeah,
sketch.
this was the one that I did by myself. Yeah.
It's
And
still
except
cool. It's still got stuff to it.
yeah. Okay, so that's what basically started it all.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, just a lot of
Oh, I
okay,
guess
and then
it's
it
all
went.
out of order. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fine, but
Whatever. Yeah, and then it.
basically this is how it started. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and then we had the idea for like an undead piece because what should you have in terms of the list? Oh, have an undead thing. Sure, why not?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so
Oh,
more undead.
that's
Oh, there we
yeah.
go with that guy. Oh, and this is just I guess a thing because we would do this as well. Oh, this isn't making sense. This isn't reading, and then we did the silhouette thing where we both did silhouettes and then refine them. So this was my stupid attempt, and then these were mine, and then these were yours. I can tell yours. Just your shapes are much better than mine. It's like, oh yeah, these are very Bob shapes. And then these are mine again. You can see my shapes suck, and
Yeah. But even here, it's sort of like we're back to the same thing again. Oh, let's try this thing. Let's try that thing. There's no direction again.
yeah. And then you gave me these, and I thought these were really cool. Like I'm like, oh, this can become something. And then I painted them a bit, and it's like, yeah, it's not. It's taking away from what you had, but it's okay, I guess. In some way, it's like, yeah, meh.
Yeah. Well, it's just sort of like we were just creating details from nothing.
Yeah,
And the thing with that is sort of like, you could find things in there, but once again, it goes back to fundamentals. Do you know what you're creating from nothing?
yeah, yeah.
And at the time, we were still kind of unskilled. No, that's one of my crappy dragon drawings.
Yeah, and then I had this idea for we could do a sorceress, and she's sort of just very imposing and whatever. And here's a sketch I did of like a thumbnail idea and some more, and then this was one you did, and it's like, okay, that's cool. And I think I ended up going with the one I did, and starts like this, and then then the next one is this, and then there's just a lot. Like, oh, does she have a cat? And this is so stiff and horrible. Like, God, I can't stand it. But anyway, okay, turned into that again, super stiff. And then, oh yeah, let's have her relaxing, but her body is still super like, I don't know, it's not at all relaxed. This is because I was painting a lot, but I wasn't drawing. And when I tell people like who say, "Oh, I need to learn how to paint," it's like, no, you need to learn how to draw. And this is a good show of someone who doesn't know how to draw but knows how to paint, knows how to cover stuff up. It's like, oh, let's add more color and value, and a pillar in the background, and sure. And by the end, it got to this point, and it's like, okay, fine, you know, it's a thing. It looks finished. But really, it's I guess I still did more like revision. Change her leg, put her leg here. Is her leg back here? No, it's still up here.
It's like all of these are things. Like once again, it just goes back to fundamentals. It's sort of like, you know, if you have a bad drawing, it doesn't matter how much you try to cover it up with. You can have all the rendering in the world, but it's just like if the base is bad, it's all going to come crumbling down. Yeah,
and then this was a paint over by I think Mike Azevedo. He PK Mike. He did a paint over, and that's like, okay, yeah. And then
there's some. This
is another sorceress here.
Yeah. This should be before, but it's not whatever.
Yeah. And then
some more undead stuff, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, and then so we decided to do this undead. I think I did this thumbnail, and you actually said it's pretty okay. And so it's like, okay, so we'll have an undead character. So we have our sorceress, we have our dragon. Remember, the dragon was attacking the city, and then it's like, okay, so started out like this. And this was one of my biggest problems is like, fine, I had some energy in this, but it seemed to disappear really quickly. And then it was a case of trying to maintain the energy. So try this. Oh, how's the leg going to be? Fix it. Oh, and this was a trick we learned. Like, sort of blow out the lighting and have atmosphere and debris everywhere. And, oh, yeah, that's a cool thing. Oh, rim light. That's a thing. Let's add that in there. And then you came up with these sketches. And
yeah. Because, like, the previous one, we went through so many revisions.
Yeah, it was just bad.
Over and over.
It was just bad. At some point, you have to realize, like, this is going nowhere. Let's just kill it.
Yeah.
Oh, and you had this idea of like an undead guy. I don't know if he's going to kill someone, but
anyway. Yeah. He's some sort of executioner or something. Undead executioner.
And just you played a lot with like the camera.
Yeah.
And I did this stupid thumbnail of a guy like shoveling, and you're like, oh yeah, I could work with this or something. And so you did this one. The guy like pulling him out of the ground. It's like, okay, so. Go with that one, pulling him out of the ground. Here's some notes you added.
Just a lot of dicking around, I guess.
Yeah. It's still like it's got potential, but we kept hitting this wall of our limitation. Like, you have a thumbnail, and then you try and paint it. It's like, where's this going? And do some more work.
We're just very lacking in our fundamentals because like it's like where's the leg going, like where's the horizon line, like it just doesn't make any sense.
And then we switched because it's like, okay, scrap that idea, let's try a new idea, and had this idea of like undead, and he's so these are mine again, and he's like spitting out these bugs or something, and I thought, because it was this thing of I never liked doing cliche things, and I always try and be original, but my original ideas usually suck. So I'm always fighting it. I used to do, when I was like 13, 14, 15, I was doing web design, and I had a friend who was also doing it, and what he would do is he'd look at what's already done and then just try and copy it. And what I would do is look at what's already done and think, I'm going to do something completely different. So I would do like organic designs, and they were terrible. And he's like, it's ugly. And I'm like, yeah, but nobody's done this before. It's like, it's ugly. There's a reason.
I think once again, it's a balancing act. It's like, if you're going to go original, it's like, you got to be aware that like, it's like something that's original isn't really developed, and it could just end up being raw, original stuff, and it could
I,
just suck.
I think it's a thing that Daniel Dochu was thinking in terms of ideas. I think it was more like, you just have bad taste. I think it came down to that. Like, I didn't have good taste.
Oh,
And that, and then I learned, like, you can get it, but.
mm-hmm.
So these were some sketches you did after the ones I did.
I sort of built off of the idea because it's sort of like, oh, it's this undead thing grabbing at the camera, and then it's just sort of like, well, why don't we make it literal? It's like it's grabbing the camera. You can see a little bit of the flesh from the character that's being grabbed.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if you can see it, but I think in one of the images, the person that's being grabbed is holding onto the arm of the undead or something.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And so that turned into this.
Yeah.
And then from here, I guess I changed something. Anyway, that turned into this, which is my ruining. No, is this still yours? Have I ruined
it's
it?
mine.
Oh, good.
It's mine.
Good.
So I'm ruining it.
Oh, good. And then so it went from this, and then I think you gave it to me at this point, and then I turned it into this. Like, the tree's okay in the background. It's like, oh, there's a nice. It's not that nice when you zoom in. There's a moon. That's nice. But the rest is just like, and all these, the bugs just look super crisp, and it's just ugly to me. I look at this and it's like, oh man. And then a bit more work, more blah, and okay, so he's captured this guy and he's just spewing out bugs on his face and I mean, I shouldn't say it's too bad because we ended up getting this in our portfolio. So,
oh jeez. Here's, I think this is another undead piece.
Yeah, with the army, I guess.
Yeah, and he's like being shot by arrows, and there's dead bodies around him. That kind of
stuff.
stuff.
Oh boy, I know what this turns into.
Yeah. It's gonna be that. So
boy. We got to this point. Oh no, yeah. I'm dreading. I'm dreading going to the next one. I know. It's like, oh, what does this turn into? No, we don't need to see that. Oh boy. Okay, so it turned into the... But wait, there's more. Oh no. Okay.
Yeah, it turns into this.
Then. Oh no.
Oh god. Oh, so much for our collaboration.
The icing on the cake, or the turd. Yeah. So
but this is it. It's sort of like, our flaws.
Good, it stopped.
Our flaws, like our capabilities, like the holes in our fundamentals, were really showing.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like we both of us are lacking in crucial areas. So then when we come together, instead of making it better, it just got worse.
Yeah.
Because it's sort of like we don't know what's going on with this image, and so that it just became more confusing.
And then this was this when we actually already got hired? Yeah, this is when we got hired. So we had enough pieces with the dragon and the undead and the crab thing. Like, the crab thing was cool. So we had those, and then we ended up, like, it worked. Our trick worked. That, hey, this is usable. So I think our first thing was an Assassin's Guild.
Yeah.
And so we're thinking of, okay, so we're drawing this Assassin's Guild, and we thought, well, it's assassin, so their guild is probably going to be really shady. Maybe it's in a black market. And this is what we do at first. We talk about it and get like, oh yeah, we're going to have this, and it's going to be cool, and it's going to be dark, and I think darkness.
Like, one of the things that we noticed, in the beginning, when we first started working on these cards, like when we got the job, there's the elation that's sort of like, oh, we got the job,
We
weaseled our way into it.
We're real. We're people now. Because I had done commissions and stuff, but it was more like, oh, a caricature commission here or there, or a little piece of work for somebody. But this was like, oh, we're doing that thing that, I mean, we're not at a high level, but we're doing the thing that Dave was doing. Oh,
Yeah,
he's,
we're on our way. We're on our way,
like,
basically.
oh, a few more years and maybe we'll work for Wizards or something.
Yeah, and so then there's that one to it, and there's also this thing which is like in the initial phase, we actually came up. I think we came up with some pretty good ideas.
Yeah,
And then it's just like, oh yeah, we're going to this. Oh yeah, this is pretty nice. You
yeah.
know?
So
And then
this was one idea, and then this was another idea.
yeah. With this, it's just sort of like the idea was just sort of like there's just shady people around, and
I
then
think this is after the first revision when they're saying like, oh, make it bigger. Like, no, it needs to be bigger.
yeah, that was really confusing because like I was just thinking, well, it's an assassin, right? Like assassins, they're inconspicuous. That's the whole point. They don't want to be They don't want to be caught. But it's just like going into it, it was just very confusing. It's like,
Like
oh,
maybe
we
it
want
was
the
a
assassin to
language
be
thing,
bigger.
because we thought of assassin as something like, oh, you know, you're stealthy, you're killing in the night, and it's like, okay, Assassin's Guild, but then I'm pretty sure there was something in the language that we're probably missing. Like it was probably supposed to be something entirely different, because where it went, their notes were like, no, don't make it so dark and gloomy, and it ended up being this that got approved. Like, oh yeah, this is good, and we're like, well, but this is more like a cathedral than an Assassin's Guild, and you know, it turned into this when I was, you know, so this was your thing, handed it over, I turned it into this, and then, you know, added some more stuff, and it became this very like bright, sunny thing.
It changed into something else completely. Basically, we'll just rename this as something else.
Yeah, and then a city in the background, and you know, just I don't know. It was so far from the initial idea that at this point the excitement kind of gets reduced by a lot, and it becomes like, oh, anyway, and yeah, some god rays and stuff, and got this idea.
This is one of the tests that we had to do in order to get in, right?
Yeah, and it turned into, from this, it's like a demon, and he's grabbing people by the neck with a chain, and then it was a constant, you know, you send it for revisions, you know, is this good, is this the right direction, and you get comments on how to fix it, and got to this point, and then this, and then the more I worked on it, the harder it got, and the less I was like, it's more like, what am I doing with my life? I think
what is going on here?
Yeah, I just, this is not good. I couldn't be proud of this piece. And they didn't like it either, I think. But it was sort of like, I mean, they were really nice that they gave us a shot, because look at this. It's just, this is not cool at all. This is very lacking in fundamentals. It's
I think it was Marius who was sort of like, give these guys a chance.
and this is, oh, then we kind of decided, like, what if we do our own cards? So there were a few that you did the whole thing, and a few that I did the whole thing. So this is one of the things where it's like, okay, so we'll do our own things as well. So this one was just pure me, and okay, went from this to this, and the nose is, I mean, there's drawing issues. It looks like the face is pretty flat and stuff, but yeah, I went from this to this to this, and then and so I think, yeah, this is the final, and I think this one isn't, like, the face I'm not super happy with, but it didn't turn out awful. It's like, okay, so I guess at least it was a case of, well, I didn't have to be so confused, because some of your stuff, it's like, wow, this is cool, and I don't want to ruin it, but I just got confused.
It's just this thing was like my stuff at that time was super rough. It's just like it's hard to comprehend what was going on then.
Yeah, and then this one, it was, the idea was like reanimating an ogre or something, I don't know, an undead, like, giant dude. And so in the bottom here we have like a sorcerer who's supposed to be, you know, bringing this thing to life. And it's like, okay, I tried different views. It's like, okay, I like this. I thought, oh, wouldn't it be cool if it's all happening at nighttime? And this is kind of the ideas we would get excited about like just behind the scenes, like, oh yeah, this is gonna be great. They're gonna really like this. It's gonna be nighttime, and you have like a flash of lightning, and this guy's being reanimated, and then it's like, oh, what if it's again just a different face, a different type of character, and then this is kind of where we're told
It ended
to go.
up going, yeah.
It's like, okay, go here, and then I thought, okay, so can we keep the lightning? And it's like, and this is the paint over we received. They sent this paint over, and it's like, no, make it look like this. And it was like, okay. So then, I don't know where this came into it, but it just, it turned more like this, and then I think...
It was just revision after revision.
Yeah.
It's just sort of like, oh, we want this, well, why don't you try this? And it's just, by the end of it, we were just sucked completely dry. It's just like we just had no energy.
It's like you don't even remember what you were doing, and it becomes like, just keep coloring it, keep adding more details, and it got to this point, and I think this was a finished piece, and it was just like, this is one of the pieces that really discouraged me, because I thought like, not really happy with it. And then this, we had an idea for like a flying ship, like an airship.
Yeah, okay, that's what it was, yeah.
And then it turned into this, like you did this sketch, and I was like, whoa, that's so cool.
Yeah.
And then that from here, it turned into this.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know, the coloring thing was kind of hard. They wanted like more pipey things, and it went to that, and then, this arrow is just signifying the light source. It's like, okay, doing more. And then the black was too, dark, so it's like, now make that light steam, and so that's the final. And I just couldn't maintain your cool thumbnail. I couldn't keep it.
It's sort of like, it's even when you cleaned it, it showed the places where it's sort of like, because like when I remember looking at the sketch, it's sort of like, oh yeah, this seems nice, but it's like, it's all just rough lines, and there's a lot, like now it's just the captain, where's the crew? There's nothing there, and it's just sort of like, oh yeah, there's been nothing there in the sketch in the first place. So it's just this thing, it's just like, it's rough, and you can get away with a lot when it's rough. But it's just like when you clean it up, and especially when you hand it off to another person, you have to be concise. You have to be able to say, you have to be able to show them what this is. You have to be able to communicate visually, and I wasn't able to do that. So it's like, it was failing on both ends, really.
So then we had this other idea for, or not an idea, it was a prompt, because we're getting the prompts to do the work, and so it's like this aristocratic elf guy who's, I thought maybe he would be having his shoes shined by a goblin or something. So I tried this, and oh man, this was super stiff, and I hated the drawings. Like, nope, can't work with this. Got to redo it. And I came up with this character, and I thought, you know what? This guy looks better. I kind of I like his personality. I like this little goblin creature. And I came up with this thing, and it's like, okay, maybe that's an okay thing to work with. And so it turned into this guy, and I still like this guy much better as a concept, but okay, turned into this. And then when I got to this point, it's like, this isn't good. This doesn't look good, and I don't think they were happy with this either. The direction it was going, he's sort of looking off into the distance, and, the drawing got a bit better, though. And then, okay, so then it turned into this. Okay, so this guy's just bringing him his sword. And it ended up like this. And then I think you had this idea. And this was something that I found really frustrating with Bob, is sometimes he would just be like, oh, yeah, what if you did this? And it's like, it's done already! Like, could you give me some tips? It's like, I think this would look better.
I think that's one of the things that I notice about myself, is sometimes like I'll look at it's like when I think about it, I've done this a lot. I look at something, it's just like, you know what, this entire thing, just throw it away. Do this instead. Yeah. It's just like it's forcing somebody to throw away all their work.
Yeah, it's like, dude, we have a deadline, and this is a sketch, and then I tried to do it, and yeah, this was not. The perspective too, I couldn't handle this. It was too difficult for me. And then this one, I think the prompt was Lizard Barbarian. This is the first sketch I did. And then I did this one. It's like, okay, let's work with this. Yeah. And then, it was super ugly in the colors at this stage. So it's like, okay, tone down everything. But I did like this. And this goes back to when I was doing those thumbnails and putting in like weird colors. It's like, oh, I do like having weird colors. The anatomy's really screwed up, but whatever. And then, it turned like this, and then eventually it turned into this. And actually, this was super successful for a portfolio piece. I guess because, I included motion blurs, and the face is okay, and look, you've got rusty metal, and debris, and in the background a lot of cards tended to have the same environment. It was sort of like this rocky thing that just put in. You have embers because that's cool, smoke because that's cool, atmosphere because that's cool, and it's just really formula. It's just formulas. And I got so many job offers after this for we really like this piece, and can you do more, and you did this, obviously. Like, why don't you do this? Completely different piece, but
But why don't you throw away all that work and just start over?
Yeah, because for you, a drawing is like, you'll do drawings like, it could be this or it could be that, but for painting, it's like, this is like probably over 20, 25 hours of work, and then just do this. So, and then this was one of your ideas, I think, the Goblin Berserker.
Yeah.
So just got dual wielding axes, and these were your thumbnails.
Yeah. God, these are terrible.
And then I think you ended up going with 5.
Yeah. And that one just went into fucking development hell.
God, it took forever to get this piece done.
Yeah, I don't even know if they accepted it. I really don't remember.
Yeah. Was it this far that you got? I think you got a bit further than this, but still, it was pretty...
Yeah.
This was like months of work.
It was just sort of like going back to it. It's just like, I feel miserable. I got to do this, but I got to finish it, but I don't know how. So it was a combination of a lot of things. Lack of capabilities, just not enjoying the work, a lot of revisions, I think. Like, I would send it to them, and it's just like, this must be done. And it's just like, nope, you got to keep doing it.
I guess this was a steam golem. So we got like a steam golem thing. It's like, okay, so I did this sketch, and it's like, okay, worked on it and kind of put him in this westerny environment. I think this is when I sent it to you, and then you took this and you turned it to this.
Yeah.
Well, this with the drawing, and then I just polished it a bit, but and then I think this is where we sent it off, and then we got revisions like, no, it needs to be colorful, and so we had to color it, and I think they picked this one. This is the one they went with in the end, and then I kind of preferred it with the darker version, so I just...
Well, it just, like, for me, it just made more sense, because it's just like, the Steam Age, it wasn't necessarily clean.
Yeah, and this one kind of gave me too much of a Transformers feel. But anyway, they liked this one more, so it's like, okay, fine. And then this one was I don't even
some
remember.
Sort of forest creature.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Jesus. Oh boy, this is gonna be painful. So these were your thumbnails. These were my thumbnails. Yeah. And I think I went with 2. I think. And it turned into this. Oh no! Oh, but it gets worse.
The drawing understands.
And then I did this, and I thought, again, it's me being original and having stupid ideas. I thought, what if the branches become this, and it, my mouse is going crazy. But anyway, and then
maybe it would look better with leaves.
Yeah, let's put some leaves. That'll cure everything. And no, just really bad custom brushes, and this is not okay, not acceptable.
Yeah.
And then eventually they didn't like the head, so I get rid of the head. It's like, okay, so just replaced it with another one of these things, and leaves again. Anyway, okay, so here we have a genie thing. I guess these are yours. Well, obviously these are yours. They're much too good to be mine.
Are they? I don't know if they are. Some of them might be.
You think no? Because these shapes are yours. They're too. Again, they're too strong to be mine.
Oh, well, okay, well, whatever. Either way.
I can tell my suckage a mile away.
Jesus.
So yeah, you did this one, but I didn't. I don't know. I wasn't really digging this one.
Right.
And so, yeah, I think you sent me this. And anyway, I redid it and turned it into this thing.
Right. The thing is, you got a lot of like people really liked it.
Yeah, people really liked it, but I hated it. I hated this arm, and I felt really annoyed at like this. I just felt like this is not good. I can't draw. I'm not good at this job. I'm not good at life and stuff. But yeah, this one got some pretty good feedback, and then this is one you did yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. It was like the attempts were the ones that I did by myself were super nerve-wracking, just because I didn't have that polish. So it's like I could come out with something good for all I know, but it still might look pretty bad by the end.
Yeah, I got to this stage, and I think this is the furthest it got.
Yeah.
And then I did this piece. Went from this, and then it went to this, and then this was the final. I don't hate it. There's a wolf in the background that I kind of like, and yeah, it's okay. This one I don't hate then. So then there was one. And this was the elf person.
Huntress.
Yeah. Again, just not knowing what we're doing, and
Yeah.
I think I sent you this, and it was. You really were not happy with this. You were not. No, nothing to do with this. So this was one of the times I think there was still me, and then this is when you took over.
Yeah.
Because I sent you this and you're like, this sucks, and then okay, and then you added these clothes and a different saddle thing, more elaborate. Again, it's a drawing that came into it. And this, and I had no understanding of what cat's paws look like. I should have just used reference.
Yeah.
Anyway, it got to that, and then, this was that. And then this one, the idea was like they're good guys, but they're like heavy infantry units. They're the first. They're on the front lines. And I thought, like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if they're really imposing? Like, these guys are... I guess this is mine, this is yours.
No, I think those are yours.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and I thought, like, oh, they're on the front lines, and this is kind of the idea I was really satisfied with. Like, they're just trudging through the mud, and it's very dark and dreary, and they're just...
It's raining as well. It's like, oh, this is war. This is war.
I thought, there's gonna be mist, and they're like heavy, and so it got to this, and I was pretty satisfied with this. It's like, okay, it's dark, but they didn't like it because they thought, no, these are good guys. They look like bad guys, and I thought, but no, the good guys are going into war. That proves their valor. That shows how good they are. And then it's like, no, it was more of a no, gotta make them look good. So their suggestion was to make it more bright and sunny and stuff. So it's like, okay, gotta do what the client prefers. So then it ended up being this one, which is a much different feeling than originally. And then this one, I mean, this was my thumbnail, and this is how simple they start. It's like, okay, gonna have a person playing the harp and pacifying these goblins, and went from this to this to this. That's a pretty good jump, and then more. I didn't hate this piece. I thought in the end it's like that. got to this point. It's like, okay, they didn't like all the effecty stuff. It's a bit too strong, so get rid of the effects. And I thought it's okay, it's not terrible.
Yeah.
And then this was a pretty hard piece. It was like what was it? It was like a forest waterfall thing.
It's a magical forest of some kind.
And there was a centaur. They wanted a centaur somewhere. So I had this thing. This is the idea, and just like, okay, there's a centaur, but he's in the background. Don't pay attention to him. It's more like a hidden thing, because I really like those types of images where you look at them, and then after a while you'll find things in the background, like like the one where I had the wolf in the background. It's like, oh, there's a wolf here, and oh, there's a centaur. That's cool. And so they wanted the centaur to be more prominent. So I thought, okay, make a centaur like this, like more in the foreground. But anyway, this was what I sent, and then it still was like, no, it needs to be more obvious with the centaur. So it's like, okay, where should I just put him everywhere? Where should I put him?
Centaurs everywhere.
And tried to keep him hidden, but it's like, no, let's have him taking more of a role, and then ended up just scrapping this. Like, this isn't working. This isn't a good image. So okay, had this, and then like made it all magical because it needed to be magical, and let's have him be all dashing, and it ended up getting like this, like super weird, and blip 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 blip. I don't remember which one they picked, but this one, oh boy,
oh Jesus,
it killed us. One. It killed us.
Yeah. I think this was the last straw. It's just like, okay, we are not cut out for this.
So it was a mage librarian, and how many months were you doing this for?
I don't remember.
I was like, deadlines, and so I started like this, and then you took it from this one to this one, and then you got it pretty far, like at the stage, and then it's like, oh yeah, because it's almost finished, so start from the beginning. Bob logic.
But here's the thing, like, go back to the other one, and it's just like, look at this. It's like, it's garbage. Not only was I not capable of finishing it, but it was just like, because the client wasn't happy with it either. I sent it to you, and then where I sent it, I don't remember the specifics, but it's just like, it was not done. Cannot be finished on my end. So it's just like, okay, so this is a drawing problem then. It must be. Or it's an ideal problem. It's just like, fuck, let me redo this. Because like, I remember, it's like, I just remember the Undead one, where it's just sort of, we slaved away at one version, and it's just like, this sucks, let's just restart it. And then each time we restarted it, it was a little bit better. Even though it ended up being what it was. So it's just like, screw it, let's just redo it. And then, I went into the thumbnails.
Yeah. And then this,
like,
I liked some of these, but it was so frustrating. Like, I would hate that I liked them, because it would mean like, yeah, this is better, but can you go back to your old one and finish it?
Yeah. But it's just this thing where it's just like, oh, like, these are so much better. It must, like, I must be able to finish it, right? Like the drawing's better, the composition's better. I should be able to finish it. And it's just like, no.
Yeah. So I think you started with this one, and man, after this, we can't really show more freelance work, because we did have other jobs, but I don't think we're allowed to show the work. But we got into jobs that we thought would be less fun, like animation. Animation-related jobs, not animating, but we worked for some animation studios, and actually that was a lot more fun, doing some comics and stuff, and we tried a bit of storyboarding, but I thought I would hate it, but I actually liked it more than this, and that was very eye-opening. But
but they all had a similar pattern. At the beginning, it's just like, oh, we think, well, maybe this will be different. Maybe we'll get something out of this. And then in the initial start, when we just work on our ideas, it was like, oh, this is fun. We get to explore what we want. And that's what we thought the job was. But it's just like, no, in reality, it's like, it's what the client wants. There's revisions. There's the fact that you might find out that you're not good enough. It's a constant cycle of just sort of just misery in a way. just like, oh, you think it's going to be good? It's like, no, here's the reality. And you have to deal with it.
Yep. So, where do we go from here?
Hey everyone, Bob Meatbag here, and welcome to another episode of Blocky Bean, where I take you through my adventure into pretending to be a professional artist.
So, we've already been through pointy chins and Lucky Beans, just a bit of a joke. So this is going to be pretty much just you, Bob, talking about your stuff. Because, again, where I went after this was, okay, I'm going to try and find a style. I'm going to try and find me. What do I like? I don't want to be in a job where I'm completely hating it. Like, what's the point? Why would you work so hard to be an artist to just be doing something you really don't enjoy? But then the hardest question then became, but what do I like? What do I want to do? Do I want to do character design? Do I want to do, like, what is interesting to me? And we're both going through this. And we're still in this stage. But yeah, why don't you go over what these are?
Well, it was pretty much after the cards with things that we were doing.
Well, we did freelance as well. We did the cards, and then we did a bunch of freelance, and then we came upon this idea of what if we actually did what we wanted to do.
Yeah, because at that point, I think we all realized just how much we disliked, I don't know, just the way things are, right? Like at that moment, like my relationship with art, I hadn't really thought of it that way. It's like, oh, my relationship with art, but like, basically, it wasn't really something that I was enjoying at the time, especially with our experiences in freelance.
Mm-hmm.
So we just eventually got to the point where it's just like, okay, we gotta just do things that we like. Otherwise, we're not gonna get anywhere. So it was at this point that we just sort of started exploring. Just like, okay, before it was just like, oh, what should we do? Should we practice this or should we do that? But now it's just sort of like, well, instead of what should we do, it's sort of like, what do we like? And this was just sort of like this. That's where we really started off. And yeah, I think this was just sort of one of the random images that I was doing. So these are some images for the Comic-Con stuff. Like, this is pins. I think, like, even with this, it's just like doing some of these images. Like, before, I was really dismissive of my screaming faces and some of the stuff that I was doing with expressions. But it was at this period that I think I really started to embrace it.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, what if I just let go? What if I just let go of my preconceptions and just accept that the screaming faces get a reaction out of people? And then what I started to realize is, before it was just like, oh, I'm relying on my intuition. Now it's just sort of like, because I became aware of that, it was just sort of like, instead of just going like, oh, the intuition comes and goes, it becomes, in what situation does the intuition activate? And then that's where I really started to go with these kinds of stuff. Here I'm doing some anatomy things, so I'm still at the point where I'm like, it's like, well, I guess I should do some more technical things just to work on my fundamentals. But even here, I think it's a pretty big difference compared to what I was doing before. Where it's just like, one, I'm working more, and two, it's like there's a bit more direction, because instead of just doing like anatomy for the sake of anatomy, it's sort of like, no, it's anatomy to reinforce my style.
Yeah.
And, yeah, that kind of stuff.
And it's a bit of a, like, you almost have to think of it like, well, I could do something, and I could, because let's say we had the stamina to keep up with the card art. Well, if we enjoyed it, we would have done a better job. But even if we didn't, yeah, maybe somehow we could keep going more and more. But eventually we would burn out. Like, this wouldn't work. So every artist we looked at that had good work that we liked, they all enjoyed their work. They were following their passion. So a lot of it is just being okay, first of all, with a passion that you don't exactly see where the money's going to come from. Like, let's pursue this. How are you going to do this? And like, for me, freelance started drying up pretty quickly once I decided I'm only going to do my own style, because I kind of anticipated that. I figured, like, I'm going to do my own work, and then probably it's not going to get much traction until I get really, really good. So I have some savings and stuff, but it's getting to the point where, like, even with YouTube, I had supplemental income with YouTube, and then it became, a case of like that money's going down now too, not because of the views or anything, because the views are going up, the subscribers are going up, but YouTube's ad people just pay less. So before I was like, oh well, like YouTube will help me with this, and now it's like I am probably going to need to find another option, maybe Patreon or something. But I need to find another thing to keep me through this period before it's like, no, I really can just do what I am passionate about and do a really good job instead of just falling into this, well, let's just do what pays. And I think for you, like with the Screaming Faces, it was also hard to embrace that.
It was really difficult because before I was very dismissive, not just the Screaming Faces, but my intuition as well, because it's just like when we were doing the cards, it's sort of like my intuition wouldn't kick in all the time. So then it's just what happens is like I just thought, oh, my intuition is unreliable. Like I cannot rely on this thing. So then I just started pursuing technical skill, or what I thought was going to be technical skill, and then so I just sort of tossed my intuition and Screaming Faces to the side. But at this period, it's just sort of like, no, my intuition is obviously the thing that makes my art appealing. So let me just try to harness that. Let me try to work with it in a way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still struggling at this point, just because like trying to come up with ideas. But my Screaming Faces, my weird faces in general are just starting to become more prominent. They're showing up more. I'm exploring more shapes with these drawings.
And they look like you're having fun.
Yeah, it's this thing where it's just sort of like the energy is more free in a way. I'm just letting where the intuition takes me, so that I'm more free, I suppose. It's definitely more enjoyable than when I'm trying to force myself to do something I didn't like.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, like as I'm saying this kind of stuff, it didn't mean that like I didn't, still had my doubts. Like for example, it's like, oh, maybe I should pick up painting again, just that kind of stuff, just trying it out. But then it's being in my mind even worse than when I was just post VFS basically.
But which one is your study and which one is the original?
Obviously the one on the left. No, it's on the one on the right.
Oh, okay.
No, it's just it's terrible,
So what's going on here?
Here is basically where I'm starting to explore graphic design. So because it's sort of like because with graphic design, if you pull it off, you don't need that much to make it. One, it's really appealing, and two, if it's graphic, you don't have to do a lot of work, and it could just end up looking professional just by adding, like for example, a rectangle, an orange rectangle behind him, have him have a white outline for the character, add text on the bottom, and then all of a sudden it looks kind of finished.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, oh, this is interesting. This is something I should try out. Basically, because like even though my stuff has gotten a lot more clean compared to before, it's still this thing. It's just like, oh, whoa, what would this look like if I cleaned it up? And then what, would it look good if it was cleaned up? Because I remember when I cleaned up my stuff back in VFS, it just looked terrible. And then, with this, it's just sort of like, okay, well, what's working, what's not? And the reason why I say illusion or form / ribcage is because that the one that's circled for the strap, basically, it's like, okay, what does this represent when it's rough, and what does it represent when I clean it up? And then that's what it basically is. It's creating the illusion of form, and then when I cleaned it up, the illusion is sort of gone. Because I'm not sure if that's accurate what I'm describing.
No, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Portable toilet.
Oh yeah, I got the spelling wrong on that. I don't know how I did, but apparently I did. My spelling is terrible.
That's okay.
But basically, I was looking at like what makes an image look finished, what makes it look professional, and what I noticed is just like even with a lot of posters, a lot of the shots are like very hero shots. They're very iconic, and if you have an iconic image, all of a sudden it looks like it's like a piece of illustration. Because like the images that I do usually end up looking like something from a cinematic. Like you pause the movie in the middle of something, and it's like something from a storyboard. It looks very in motion, but it doesn't end up looking finished like an illustration piece. So this is just a test. Can I do it? And it's sort of like I think I can. I kind of can, just from looking at other artists. Because it's just like, oh, they're just doing iconic shots, symmetry basically. Yeah. With this, it was just sort of an exercise of like draftsmanship, because like once again, my stuff is super rough. So then it's just like, okay, get two dots, connect the line in the middle, and it's harder than it looks. So I used this as a warm up for a while. But yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, going into anatomy, just goes like, okay, well, I've studied a bit of anatomy. Um, do I know what the muscles are like when they're in motion? Like, how can I test my knowledge to recognize them in like reference in real life, basically? So this was another test, and all these are still kind of technical in terms of like I'm still not really exploring myself too much. Here is one of the screaming faces that I just just cleaned it up and made it ready for like I think Comic-Con or a T-shirt or something like that.
Yeah, you were deciding like, should you have the outline? Should you not have the outline?
Yeah, just basically experimenting. But I think what's the most important about this point is just like I really started putting in because like with the stuff from earlier, the drawings that I were doing were just sort of like, oh, they were just one or two pieces of drawing. But now it's just like I'm really starting to put in more work. Just like what's important right now is the mileage,
Mm-hmm.
getting more comfortable, getting that work ethic in there, but also doing it in a way that I enjoy. These are the pillow ideas that did not make it to Comic-Con, but nonetheless, it was just like, I don't know, just trying expressions.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, it's like when I just do these faces, when I just let my intuition take over, they create these really comical characters, and apparently it just gets a lot of laughs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like the one that's P. It's sad that it's getting crushed. Why are you hurting me?
Oh.
Yeah. Poster I did for Comic-Con, basically featuring Jacques, because Jacques for a while I think was my best character, because like I did it when I really didn't have much skill, but it was good enough that it caught Daniel Dochu's eye. He said, "Oh, I really like this. Out of all the crap that you showed me."
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's just like, oh, he's got a lot of character. So yeah, it's one of the posters I ended up going with.
Yeah, the design is a lot stronger, and it looks finished. It looks like, in the beginning it was such a struggle of, oh, how do you make a piece look finished? Do you have to paint it? Do you have to almost like not be yourself? But this is really a case of like, no, you still can be yourself. You still can just, you need other things.
Yeah, this was at this point. I started getting. I think after the sketches for the meat bags, I really started getting much more of a better handle on cleaning things up and color.
Mm-hmm.
So even though I might lose a lot of energy with my rough drawings, when I cleaned it up, it's that like I filled in the color, I put in the shading, and as long as the drawing was solid, it would still be okay. And that's what I didn't have before. My drawings were not solid. So when I tried to clean it up, and color, it fell apart. But now it's just like, okay, things are a bit more solid. I understand graphic design a bit more. So it ended up looking like, oh, this isn't bad. Like things are starting to come together.
Mm-hmm.
This was just figuring out balance, how force, like how the human body stands up to gravity, and how force travels through the body. A value. I think this is a value study, and it kind of goes to show, just I don't know, just how confused I still am at this point. It's just like I would do screaming faces on the side sometimes, but then I would come back to this, and just like, oh, I guess this is what I'll do next.
Mm.
Oh
yeah, we did this in
Yeah. This is a comic idea.
And then
Some perspective stuff.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. A lot more perspective stuff. And I think these are some of the drawings I did while I was in Romania.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
These are awesome. I really like your Frankenstein. Such a strong design.
Yeah. I was working more like it's at this point that's just like, okay, things are just much more in my style now.
Yeah.
Just like I'm not trying to be like, even with the Thor stuff, I'm not doing that anymore. It's like, oh, what's my shape? Blocky beam. I'm gonna go with it.
Yeah.
Now instead of just screaming faces, I think I started adding bodies to them.
Yeah.
So this is like even here, it's just like, oh, there's two characters. One has a foot for arms, It's just oh that's amazing, and his hands are his feet, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Um, it's just so much more of accepting yourself instead of trying to do what is popular or what everyone else is doing and thinking like you have to do that and you have to be successful and this is what success means. Instead,
Hmm.
it's like fine, take a risk. I guess it comes at a cost. Luckily, neither of us really live extravagantly.
That's
like,
true.
I think we're both pretty comfortable being poor.
Yeah, we don't need much, but it's like I've been thinking about it. It's just like during that time where we were just so lost and confused. It's sort of like, well, I guess in a way our instinct was just to look for the answer, because like it's like oh, just look for the answer on the internet. Look for the answer from artists that are already doing things,
Hmm.
because it's like it's such a hard question to figure out what do I like. What is the thing that I'm going to do, especially if you have such self doubt. And in the beginning, when your drawings suck, or at least that's what I thought of my stuff. It's just like, man, this sucks. There's no way this could be any good. I got to look at other artists.
Yeah.
And I guess the one good thing that we can take away from all the struggle and the pain and the misery we went through is just realizing how much we hate doing things that aren't ourselves.
Hmm.
It's just like we really know now. It's just like, no, it sucks. We're
Yeah.
just going to do our own thing, and it's proving to be, and it's working out. Like
Yeah.
at this point, I really started enjoying more of my stuff. It's like, oh, screaming faces. What else can I do with them?
Yeah. I wish like I could transmit the knowledge back to the past of like this is what you like. Don't worry, it will work. Because that was
Hmm.
pretty much yeah. The big fear is like, am I gonna do this? Am I going to waste my life pursuing something that's not even going to go anywhere? And really, you can't be thinking about that. It's more like, don't worry. Don't worry if there's no jobs. Don't worry about any of that. You just have to trust that once you get good enough, if you're doing what you really like, first of all, that's going to show in the work. And second of all, once you get good enough, there will be jobs for you. You just have to get really, really good. And how do you get really good? Well, you need to put in a ton of work. And how do you put in a ton of work? Well, it's it's best if you enjoy it. If you don't, absolutely hate everything you're doing, or if you feel like it doesn't even feel like work. It just feels like fun. Like
Hmm.
yeah, sure, maybe it's harder in some cases. Like oh yeah, learning anatomy, this is a struggle. But like when I do anatomy studies while doing pointy chin style things, it's like yeah, this is hard, but it's interesting. I'm still able to be engaged in my work, and when I just do a study that has no relationship to anything I'm interested in, if it's just sort of like a floating, you should do this because this will help you, because this is important. All the pros know this. Everyone, oh, learn fundamentals. Why? Because you should learn fundamentals. It's like, oh, well, what does that even mean? Where
Yeah.
if it's like, um, learn how to shade values. Like, why? Because then this picture that you really like will look even better. It's like, oh, okay, cool, yeah.
Yeah. It was at this, like, even just a few images back where I'm doing the anatomy stuff. It's just like I was doing it because I thought this was good for me. But it's just like, yeah, like now I'm just being so much more free. It's just like it came together. It's just like, oh, if I'm doing these creatures, then it's sort of like the anatomy just comes by itself, and then actually flows into it. And it's just it's there's a purpose behind it now,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it really shows. Like even with this, it's just like, oh, I'm really starting to experiment with it. And I think at this period, what I really started figuring out was just figuring out my own psychology. And you hear I hear this a lot with like people who dedicate themselves to a craft. Oh, I learned so much of myself through this, and it's like, oh, why is that? Oh, it's because you figure out, if you're honest with yourself and you dedicate yourself to a craft in a way that you're being honest, then it's sort of like you're figuring out, what do I like? How does my brain work? What environment am I working in, and what environment am I productive in? And with this, it's just sort of figuring out, one is that I don't have much stamina. So like from before, we were talking about, oh, we don't have much stamina. It's like, well, why? We're doing things that we don't like. That's wasting our energy. So then through this, it's sort of like I had to figure out, at what point and what way do I work in a way that doesn't use up my energy. And then it's like with screaming faces, I can knock them out like that. And I've been drawing them for so long. It's so deep within my subconscious that I can just draw them so easily, and I'm barely using any energy. And it's just like right away. That's a sign. That's the sign that I'm figuring out for myself. Another thing, what makes me productive when I'm doing art? Do I work better in silence and just drawing? No, I just get frustrated. I'm noticing, oh man, like I'm struggling with this. I don't like it. But as soon as I put on music or an audiobook or just something in the background, boom, all of a sudden I'm more productive. My intuition activates. I just figure out what environment do I work in, what's my psychology, and how do I harness my intuition. So that's two things that I figured out about myself. And then and going through that, I started figuring out about things about my biology as well. Do I work better if I haven't drawn for a day and then just straight off draw? It's like, no, of course not. After a while, if I draw some more, my arm starts to warm up and I start to draw better. Oh, that's something else. You're figuring out about your own biology. Doing stretches with your arms, massaging my muscles. I started figuring it out as soon as I started becoming more honest with myself. Approaching things on a scientific way. And this all just came from just realizing I don't want to do other people's stuff. I just want to do things that I enjoy. What do I enjoy? Just by asking that question, I arrived to all these different conclusions. And my art changed, and then I became so much more productive. And it's just like, wow, if I had figured this out earlier, that'd be so much better. But nonetheless, so going through that struggle, it's good.
It's weird to think, like, or not weird, but it's almost obvious when you look at this. Let's just say someone showed you this, and it wasn't like, maybe this was a few years back and you didn't know this was your work, and they just said, okay, look at this work, and what do you think? Do you think this person would like to draw magic cards? It's almost like, no, like, come on, this doesn't look anything like that. And it's really trying to fit yourself in what you think needs to be the case. Now, with saying all this, I do understand that, the obvious, I guess, unspoken question would probably be, how are you doing this? How are you able to survive? And it's like, well, you've got to be smart about it. You got to save. You've got to live off very little to be able to do this, or you've got to think in advance. Like, if we did this when we're really young, and like, you've got your parents' support, you don't have to worry about where you're going to live and how to make ends meet. Yeah, that would be even easier. But that's why I hope this helps people in terms of really figure out who you are, because it makes such a big difference in your future and where you head.
Just where you're going to be going. And it's just, I don't know, it's just like figuring out how it works psychologically, biologically, and environmentally. And here's the thing that I got really surprised. It was super technical and scientific, like the way I figured out how I work. And then just by doing that, the way I approached art was completely different. Because before, my intuition was just at random. Now I know how to harness it. It might not work 100% of the time, but I can do it on a pretty consistent basis now. And it's just like, just by asking myself that question, it's sort of like, it's like you're figuring out how your brain works. And for me, I figured out how my brain works. And these are the conditions that I work in,
Yeah.
And it also, I suppose, opened me up to it made me really open-minded, because it's sort of like, as soon as I figured out how my brain works, it's just, my brain, it's not just the set path. You have to, I don't have to just do anatomy and perspective and stuff like that. Because, that's one way of doing it, but the brain is so much more complex. Like for me, it's like, I do all these fundamental stuff, but it doesn't work for my brain. So that means this other way worked for me. So that means for everybody with their own brains, they can do it in any way that fits them. And it's just sort of like, anything's possible now. I remember when we talked about how all roads are valid, all options are valid, as long as you stick through it. And this just sort of reinforced that. Our brains are so complex. Evolution gave us so much more possibilities with our brains. And it's just like, okay, so that means everything's open. We just have to figure out in what conditions do we work, and then go through it in an honest and, I suppose, scientific manner. And once when you do that, it's just you're free in a way.
Yeah, because there's this thing of, like, a tendency to worry about, well, what did this person say or that person say? And I hear it a lot, and even now, it's almost like, but Feng Zhu said you need to do this, or this person said you need to do this, or Dave said this, or this person said that. Or even with me, they might say, Sycra's video says, learn the fundamentals, so therefore whatever. And I had this even with myself, where I worked best drawing in bed, and then I had some comments of, you're so lazy, and get off your ass and go, and it's like, well, yeah, but if it works for me, what's wrong with that? why should I fight myself if this is actually what works? And I kept fighting it before with like things like, oh yeah, you're just being unprofessional. This is supposed to be painful. What did you expect? Like everything's going to come easy to you. Of course it's going to be hard. And I kept giving myself reasons why this should be harder instead of why because it couldn't be that, oh, this is easy, this is fun, therefore it's acceptable. It's almost like, no, it can't be easy, it can't be fun, it's got to be hard, it's got to be like, oh, you got to work through it, and then after you struggle so much, then you might get a hint of a reward, and it'll be, oh, I really earned this, instead of like, no, I'm doing what I like, this is fun for me. And hopefully, because we live in such a connected world, eventually other people are going to see this and they're going to respond, and maybe there's a chance that I will be able to do what I enjoy and make a living at it. Yeah, these are very great.
Yeah. It's just like, I'm listening to audiobooks, I'm listening to music, and then I'm just letting the intuition out, just letting it take over. It's just like, these things, I'm just so much more free with these drawings. Yeah, and at this point, it was just a period of just discovering what can I do with the screaming faces, and I think this was the happiest I've ever been with art. It's just like, I was actually starting to enjoy it. It's just like, what is this feeling? Like, because usually art is kind of a struggle for me. But it's just like, now it's just like, I'm actually enjoying this. And this, I think, was the peak of it, of the screaming faces part. And it was just like, man, and when I did this, it's just like, holy cow, this is something. Like, I actually feel as though, because before I never felt as though I could express something artistic or meaningful through visual art. But with this, it's sort of like, I'm not sure if it is meaningful, but it feels honest. It feels like it's me, and it was accomplished in a strangely easy way.
How did you start it? You just did one, and then the next, and
I just did one, and then I just drew another one, and another one, and another one, and just sort of just branched off into what it is now.
Is this all in? What is this drawn in?
It's in pen.
Oh, it's all in pen. Cool. Yeah.
There's no pencil and stuff underneath.
Cool.
But yeah. But
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, but there's just freedom in this, just being honest with myself and just like not doing. I don't know. I suppose it feels a lot better now, just because like I struggled so much just to find something that I like. Because before it's just like, oh, why don't I do this fan art or this fantasy thing? And it's just like, man, I really was not into that. But yeah, I think at this point, it's like all good things have to come to an end. And then at this point, I really started to notice that my screaming faces were starting to not be as good as they were before, even when I supposedly had my intuition. It's like they were not as good. They were not as original. I just ran out of ideas for them. Then I kind of got depressed.
Yeah, it feels like it's harder for you than it was. Like the others seem more enjoyable. I still think they're really cool though. But here you're already bringing other elements into it. Like, oh, that's great with this table and stuff.
The thing that I noticed with the screaming faces, because they were so new, there was just like I quickly went through a lot of different possibilities. But those possibilities were very natural to me. With these ones, the reason why I don't enjoy it as much is because I had to bring other elements into it, and ultimately, from your reaction, it sounds like as though it was a good decision. But for me, it just didn't feel natural anymore. It felt forced. So it was at this point that I actually started getting depressed again. It's just like, man, I'm not as free as I was before. But as you can see with these drawings, and then I kind of went back to this because I was lost again. It's sort of like, well, now what do I do?
Yeah, this was like, oh man, it's such a sad thing considering what you were doing a little while back, because this is not that cool.
Yeah, it's very forced,
stiff, and just Yeah,
and then with this, it's sort of like, well, the screaming faces were nice and all, but like, how am I going to do anything with them? And especially if I can't access that anymore. So, and I started looking at, once again, I was lost. And I started looking at Seller FCP and just like, oh, I like his work, but the thing is, his style wasn't my style. So, but I tried to copy him anyways. What can I learn from this? and went back to screaming faces every now and again, but it was still really forced. Just, it just wasn't as enjoyable. More seller FCP copies, just like trying to learn what he's doing. Here, it was surprising because I ended up being able to. I think this sort of reminded me that sort of like I told you, it's like, oh hey, I didn't expect to be able to do this again, and you told me this is a thing that comes and goes. It's like, okay, some days you'll do really good, or maybe for a really long time, but it's like it'll be gone in a while, but maybe it'll come back. So yeah, I guess this helped a little bit, even though when I did it, I didn't really feel all that happy for some reason. Yeah. So yeah, more seller FCP stuff. Once again, just being completely lost. And I think this is what happens. It's sort of like when you don't know what to do anymore, you inevitably look to someplace else for answers, I suppose. Yeah, more seller FCP.
Wow.
So much more stiff. Yeah. But here, there's a little glimmer of the old stuff. But once again, I just wasn't able to enjoy it as much. It just felt more forced, not as natural. And here's a huge dump. But here's an interesting thing that I got to this point. Whereas, because like before, when I was doing the seller FCP stuff, I once again got it back into that place where I just wasn't enjoying things. And then eventually, I came to this realization that's sort of like, I'm not enjoying this. Why am I doing this? Why am I bothered doing this? And then I somehow got it into my head that like, instead of just struggling so hard with this, why don't I look for an easier and smarter solution? I have a style, and it's not something that I can push any further right now by myself, but there must be other artists out there that are similar to me. So then what I inevitably did was I found other artists, and it's just like, oh, Mike Mignola, he has some stuff, right? And then I took a look at his stuff, and it's just like, there's something here that I can take, just like when I saw Kill la Kill, and I was able to replicate some of it and learn from it. And when I looked at Mike Mignola's stuff, it's just like, hey, I can do this. And then I did. I started copying his things, learning from him. I learned positive and negative space, and inevitably, when I started drawing now, my stuff looked more clean. They looked more professional. And it's just like, oh, hey, this is really cool. But, and here's the big but, I paid a price as I really started to learn during this time. Everything you do, you have a gain and a loss. In learning Mike Mignola's stuff, my stuff looked more professional. It looked cleaner, but I lost a bit of myself. It's just like, looking back at some of my VFS stuff, that was just like, they were bad, but they were really me, And then like looking at the stuff now, it's like, it's cleaner, but it's less of me in a way. And it's just sort of like, I might be able to get it back later on, but it's going to take time. And it's like, and it's just this thing that you learn, that it's just like everything's give and take in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, so...
Man, I love this one.
I think...
Great.
Yeah, like with that huge dump of images from Mike Mignola stuff, that's when I was looking at him specifically and just copying. Here, at this point, I had internalized Mike Mignola's style, but I hadn't looked at his stuff in a while. So then when I worked on this, I was able, more of my stuff started showing. And because this is the subject matter, something that I'm really interested in, I'm more passionate about it. I enjoy it more. So then that intuition starts to take over even more. So then this is what came out, and this stuff as well.
So good.
Yeah. And it's like I had, like, once again, it's sort of a resurgence of enjoying things.
Yeah.
You're going to have times where you're going to enjoy it, and you have times where you just really don't. Yeah, some more of this stuff. And here's when I started running out of steam again.
I still like this, though. It's really nice.
But for me, like, one of the biggest handicaps I have right now is that my intuition, like, I'm starting to realize it's really strong, but the biggest weakness I have is just, like, figuring out what to draw exactly. Like, I just didn't know what else to do with these characters anymore. So, it's, afterwards, it just started feeling forced, so I moved on. Yeah. But, like, even this, so coming to this point, it's like, I'm at the point where I can consistently rely on my intuition now, because I figured out in what situation it works, figuring out your own brain, figuring out your own chemistry. And it's just by being honest, what do I like?
And I guess for some people this might be like super obvious and almost maybe like there are people watching this who are just shaking their head like how can you not know what you like? That's just what you like. But for Bob and I, we're and this is true for a lot of people who suffer from depression, who have self-esteem issues, who didn't really get a chance to discover who they were and what they liked. It was more things are imposed on you, and if you don't like it, you get beaten up or you get, forced to do something you don't want to do. It's more of a case of it actually gets pretty confusing about what do I like, what do I want to do, and instead you're almost afraid of. You start to wonder, what am I supposed to do instead of what do I like to do. Instead of what do I want, what am I supposed to want? What is good to want instead of, because it's almost like everything it comes into question. I know both of us, we didn't have much freedom when we were kids in terms of choice of, oh, what do you want? For me, it was very much like, I would get like false options. My dad would be like, oh, do you want this, this, or this? And I'd be like, sometimes I'd be like, I don't want any of those. It's like, no, you want this. And then, okay. Or sometimes it's like, I want this. It's like, you want this. No, you don't. You want this. It's like, oh, okay. Okay. Fine.
Yeah, and for me, it was very similar. Just having options imposed upon me, or just like it just got to the point where I didn't trust myself really.
Yeah.
And at that point, I don't know. It kind of just goes back to science in a way, just understanding how like the human brain. Oh, it's obvious that you should like your own thing. Well, it's just like, yeah, it's obvious if you grew up in a situation where that was reinforced.
Yeah.
You adapt to the environment you're in. If you're in an environment where you don't have much freedom, you're inevitably going to be the type of person that's going to be like, well, okay, what are the choices? Those aren't my choices, but I suppose I should be doing this, and then that's your predilection.
Yeah.
So it's just you have to be aware of your own biology in a way, and it's strange when I think about it how I learned this through art,
Yeah.
But it's just like, but it's like I think anybody it's not just for visual art; it's for anything that has depth in terms of craft. You inevitably learn evolution in a way,
Yeah.
just like okay, how things evolve to this point. How does the human brain how it's not just like oh the human brain is the human brain, you were born with this brain and it works this way. No, it went through how many fucking millions or billions of years of evolution to arrive to this point, and it's got loopholes. Art is basically working with the loopholes in the brain. You're creating illusions on stuff, and by figuring this stuff out you inevitably figure out about the rules of just evolution, I suppose. And it becomes very sciencey in a way.
Yeah, and you're always confronted with yourself. Like psychology becomes such a big important subject. It's very practical.
Yeah.
It's not just psychology is something you read and it helps you understand this. Like no, you have to. I mean, you don't have to. You could be someone who never really discovers who you are, who is okay, maybe doesn't have to confront things so much. And you can go through life and have a pretty nice life, I think. But for people like myself, anyway, it's not enough. I have to figure myself out. I have to learn how to improve. I have to learn who I am, because otherwise it's just, I don't know, it feels unfinished. It feels like life is unfinished and I'm not really being myself. These are really good. You always struggled with drawing like girls and female faces.
Yeah, well, like the thing that I learned with the Michael Mignola stuff is just like instead of going after something that's completely different from me, it's sort of like what's the closest thing to me right now, and make sure, and just learning from that. Because like before, it's just like I might just look at a realistic woman and try to copy that, but it's just like, well, that's going to take so long. It's going to be so hard that I'm just going to, once again, I don't have that much energy, so I have to keep in mind that. So it's just like, okay, how can I make this easier on myself? Kill la Kill was something that I had a connection to. They were using shapes that I had. Let me take a look at Kill la Kill. What are they doing that I'm not doing? What are the things that they do that I can do? And then when I analyzed that, I was able to bring more of that stuff into the stuff that I was doing. Like here with the things I'm doing, obviously, like, I'm not there yet, but it's like it was a lot easier than when I was just like trying to figure it out. I don't know, just completely just by looking at reality, even though that has merit itself. But it's this realization that it's just like that's an option I can take. but is it practical for me? You know, and it's being honest. Can you handle looking purely at reality, or at least for me, can I handle looking purely at reality and figuring it out on my own? It's like, no, I can't. I don't have the energy for that. So, you know, it's being honest, and it's being practical in a way as well. Yeah, it's just right now I'm just like taking a look at more of Kill la Kill stuff to figure out how to draw females. Some of the things that I did learn from Stellar FCP, I was starting to able to implement here. So that struggle that I went through with Stellar FCP did end up having some merit after all. So yeah, yeah. So just more of that kind of studies, trying to figure out how to do females, and there's just a lot of them. Like I'm doing so much. And it's this thing that I realized is like I have to go through with this, and it's just I know we talked about it's like oh it shouldn't be too painful and stuff like that, and it's true it shouldn't be too painful, not to the part where you're hurting yourself, but you still have to like once you set up your zone of comfort, don't be afraid to venture out a little bit because you need to go through struggle, to go through conflict in order to grow, and that's something that I learned through art as well, which is also surprising, but it's just like that's how we sort of evolved. You know? You get faced with conflict and then just like how can I adapt to this, how can I overcome it, and then like a lot of the things that in terms of like the science and psychology stuff I learned actually through facing this conflict. Because let's say if I just followed the instructions for like oh just do perspective, just do anatomy, and then I got good through doing that, then it's sort of like it works. But because I didn't go through that conflict, I wouldn't have arrived at looking at things in a more scientific way, in a more psychological, biological, and environmental way. I wouldn't have arrived at these conclusions. I would have just been like, oh well, yeah, just do anatomy, just do perspective, just work on your fundamentals, and it's like, oh, it's really interesting. Going through all that struggle ended up expanding my horizons in a way, made me more informed about life as well. Yeah, so more of the female stuff. And at this point, it's just like before, if I would have tried to do female stuff, it's just doing females for the sake of doing females. But now I have a specific goal. It feels like when I look at this stuff now, everything's so much more on point. It doesn't feel as though I'm lost at sea. It just feels as though I'm doing this thing now, but it has a specific purpose. And it just feels it's easier to handle in a way.
And you'll still do a ton of them. Like it's not just one face. It's like
I'll do a lot. That's just like figuring out how I work.
Yeah, still some screaming faces. And
there's still some of this every once in a while, just because it's like it's my default thing. So yeah, no, I think at this point it's just like looking at my females. It's just this is an improvement. I can do it. It's a lot better than what it was before, and it's a lot faster too.
Yeah,
like the improvement that I had in the last little while compared to before is huge. Yeah, so basically more of the female stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, man, it's a big improvement.
Yeah, and here, I started doing more perspective stuff, and it's just like, oh, maybe I should do more perspective, but keeping with the lessons that I learned from before in mind, it's sort of like branch off in a way that's easy for me. It's just like, okay, how would I do it that's enjoyable for me? And for me, it's just sort of like, for the top one anyways, I'm doing more perspective stuff. Well, let's do something that I'm more familiar with, characters, and then just try to do characters in perspective. And it's just like, oh, it was a bit easier after all.
Wow.
Yeah, but like with these, it's just at the point where it's like I'm just a lot more comfortable with things now. I'm much more familiar with doing things. I'm letting the intuition take over, and the intuition is freeing up space to let me add more details to things. Like I couldn't have added this amount, like on the fabric, for example. Like I can actually, in a way, feel the softness now. I can actually add that to the drawings. So yeah. Yeah, so more drawings.
It's like I mean, you can see on the right page, right? Like look at those faces.
Yeah. But it's just like it's crazy. Like even if I go back to just some of the earlier screaming faces, it's like they weren't as detailed as this. But that's just because like I've just like for me, I figure out how my body works. I figure out the system, and then because of that, I just have a lot more room to play with.
Yeah.
Yeah, more stuff, more characters.
That's great. You're getting so much better, and man, you improved. Like once you got over, I like this character too. Here. Once you got over this thing of trying to be someone else, like this is not that long. Like what, in the span of a year or less?
Yeah.
That you had such a drastic improvement. And
Yeah.
so how old are you now? You're 19.
23.
So you're 19. Oh. No, you must have been 18 when you went to film
VFS.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man,
In the span of that amount of years, it's like it's not that long.
it's not that long at all. No.
Yeah, there was just a long period of stretch where I wasn't improving the way I am right now.
Yeah. And like I guess if you did this right after school, you would have been, 20 at this point now.
Yeah. Like who knows how good I would have been.
Mm.
But yeah, so I don't know, and it's in a way it's like I stopped being as harsh on myself, I think. Because it's just like, it's like you realize, once when you're on the right path, just like give yourself some time.
Yeah.
Don't make sure, like you still got to have a good work ethic. But it's important, for me anyways, that I figured out what work ethic worked for me. Tried not to punish myself too much if things aren't going the right way, which I still do, but that's something I got to deal with. I think everybody has to deal with in their own way.
Yeah, it's a constant struggle to remember what you were doing. Is this like a Kim Jong-gi study?
No, this was just purely from my imagination.
Wow, that's cool.
But yeah, but this is like, but yeah, it's just this kind of thing. It's just like figuring out, like how much can I visualize? What can I play with? And it's just realizing that it's like for me, it's like okay, I've got some advantages here. Let me work with it. Don't let myself deny it. And it's just sort of like, and this kind of stuff, I didn't force it. I just let it come naturally. But that's, yeah, it's just like understanding how I work, and it was through that okay, now I remember. With the even with the previous image, when I worked on perspective stuff, I would make the horizon line, create the grid, and then work off of that. But for this, the way I worked was instead of doing all that stuff, I just visualize things. I just try to feel out the object that's being made. So like for example, there's this fisheye lens, but I didn't go in with a fisheye lens grid. I just tried to imagine the object and then think of how it would naturally turn in perspective. Like if you were just looking down at things, it would naturally look this way. But I just exaggerated it a bit. But here's the thing, like I think most people learn through the making the grid and the horizon line, stuff like that, and then they do it for so long that eventually it internalizes, and then they just automatically start being able to create perspective stuff. But for me, because I realized that it's just like, no, that's not the way I work. Let me work the way that I would naturally work. This is the way I did things. I didn't need the horizon line, stuff like that. It's just realizing, okay, I can visualize it without doing the perspective grid and everything. Let me work off of that. Let me start off there. And it's like, I think for me, it's like, and maybe for a lot of people, it would be a new way of looking at how to learn perspective. But it's just like, I don't know, it's like all the options are open now. I'm not restricted by just one type of method.
You've become...
Oh, go ahead.
You've become Kim Jong Jeff.
Kim Jong J. Jeez Louise. I don't know. It's just like maybe I do have to revisit the perspective grid at some point, but it's just this thing. It's just like no, there are other options, and it's just figuring out how you work, or how I work in this case. Yeah, more stuff. It's just at this point I'm just sort of like figuring out what interests me. What do I like drawing, and then sometimes it's not as good as the other stuff that I'm doing, but it's like when the intuition comes, it comes. I don't try to force it too much these days.
Man, intuition kicks analysis's butt.
I suppose I don't know. I guess like it's not just intuition, because like I'm starting to realize that there's a lot of depth behind it. It's visualization. It's It's all sorts of factors. Like for a little while, I almost thought like, oh, maybe this is genetics, but it's just no. There's probably other explanations for this. I've been drawing since as long as I can remember. Like if that's the case, then I must have like if you're really young and you internalize things when you're really young, it's like a language in a way. You know, it's just like, oh, if you hear language when you're really young, you're gonna become pretty proficient at it. And then for me, I've always been drawing, so it's just like, you know, maybe at one point my visual library, my intuition was as average as everybody else, but through continued practice, continual internalization, it just snowballed eventually. You know, at this point, it's just like it's snowballed a lot. It's just like, okay, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Jeez, man. Look, your humble beginnings.
But yeah, it's,
from this to this.
Yeah.
Man. All right. Well, thanks for sharing your work. I'm sorry to everybody who, you know, thinks this is too long. I got some comments of people, oh, you're down to making 3-minute long videos. Well, there you go. Happy now? And thanks, Bob, for sharing your stuff.
No problem.
And to everyone else, hope this helped, and thanks for watching.